sponsored by one of my favorite sponsors, Sunset Lake Seder. But this is not a normal Sunset Lake Seder sponsorship. Why? Because all Seder products are 30% off from now until November 26th. That's right, Black Friday. So use the coupon code BF. The code is automatically applied at checkout. All Seder products. On top of that, orders over $125 will get to choose one free 20-count jar of gummies. You can get the Sleep Seder or the new Vibe gummies with 1 milligram of THC. You check those out. Those are awesome. I'm already buying a bunch of those for gifts, frankly. I've already decided that. Anyways, and orders over $250 will also receive a free Sunset Lake Seder beanie. 5% of the proceeds from this coupon code BF are going to go to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, as you know, registered 501c3 that provides reproductive health care services, sex education, and information to millions of people worldwide. And we at the Majority Report are going to match whatever that 5% number is from this big Black Friday sale. Just check it out, folks. 30% off with the coupon code BF. That means all the tinctures, the 3 different flavors of tinctures, the 4 different concentrations of tinctures, the tincture with melatonin, all 30% off with the coupon code BF. The smokables, the keef, the pre-rolls, all the different flavors of the smokables, all 30% off with the coupon code BF. The salves, the fudge, the coffee, what am I missing? The lotions, all 30% off with the coupon code BF. This is a great company. They are movement partners. They've donated thousands of dollars to strike funds and refugee resettlement and carceral reform and flood relief and food pantries. Great folks there. And now 5% of all of this sale will go to Planned Parenthood and will be matched by the Majority Report. Check it out. Great company. Sunset Lake's Seder, biggest sale of the year, ends November 26th. Don't wait. Head over to sunsetlakeseder.com. Take advantage of this deal with the coupon code BF. Help raise money for Planned Parenthood. See their website for terms and restrictions. And now for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Andy Kroll, reporter from ProPublica, covering voting, elections, and democracy, on the story of Leonard Leo, perhaps one of the most important figures on the right that you know very little about. Then actor Shaan Sharma, member of the SAG-AFTRA negotiating committee and the national committee, known for his TV work in the shows The Chosen, Mr. Mercedes, and Scandal, but here to talk to us about the SAG-AFTRA contract and why he was one of 2 members of the National Committee to vote against the ratification. Meanwhile, Israel carrying out its raid of the Al-Shifa hospital as claims of other hospitals housing command centers have fallen apart a bit. Meanwhile, a massive march in Israel calling on Netanyahu to help secure the release of hostages, contrast with a famous anti-Semite featured at the Israeli pro-war rally in D.C. 500 political appointees across the Biden administration call for change in U.S.-Israel policy. Meanwhile, the House passes a plan to avert a government shutdown, and they do it with a majority of Democratic votes. UAW locals showing more dissent with GM contract than anticipated. Starbucks workers are calling for strikes and walkouts at Red Cup Day tomorrow. Your local Starbucks. New York Supreme Court to hear redistricting arguments today. And Paul Pelosi's attacker attributes his conspiracy-addled brain to James Lindsay and a guy named Tim Pool.
Oh, can we get a whoopsie?
Whoopsie.
Oh,
All
soundboard's
this
not on yet. Oh, dang it.
and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is, as you know, Wednesday. Therefore, it is
Hump day. Hump day.
Hump day. There she is.
The answer was Hump day.
Emma Vigland with her patented trademark coin of phrase of coin.
So that's another person who committed an act of violence on the right who watches Tim Pool's show.
Please don't bring that up. You're not going to get sushi.
Yeah. That's when he said the whoopsie. That's the thing that triggered him. I mean,
Oh, yeah. He got very mad about that,
I
didn't
know.
he? Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. That's exactly what that
that's
was.
exactly
There's
what
going to
it
be a
is.
civil war.
But that one was about a neo-Nazi shooter in Texas.
Look, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, or maybe it's just Tim's marketing guy who keeps pushing all of these lunatics to
guerrilla-
cite him.
Yeah.
It's a guerrilla marketing
in their
campaign.
work. Yeah. Do we have that footage of the march in Israel? We do, right? From Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. All right, maybe we'll play that a little bit later in the program.
But very stark contrast to what you're seeing in D.C. Or what we saw yesterday in D.C.
Let's start with a quick clip of this guy, John Hagee. And when I first, he is a pastor. When I first heard that he was on the bill, and there wasn't that many people on the bill. It was like 10, 12 people, was it?
Michael Rappaport.
God. Van
Was it?
Jones.
Yeah. There wasn't, I mean, how many people were on that bill? I don't know. I saw a list, and maybe there was more. Maybe it was like 25. But this guy was deemed too toxic for John McCain back in 2008. Like, this is one of the things I'm quite convinced I've written about him in FUBAR. He was one of the most virulent anti-Semites. And when I saw that he was going to be on this this pro-war rally out in front of the White House, I thought it was a joke. And then I recalled it was like 7 or 8 that were billed. I mean, so he is one of one of the top speakers at this. And I recall a couple of interviews that Michael did back in the day, and specifically talking about the relationship with Bibi Netanyahu. And a lot of these Israelis, they were making relations not only with hard right fasci parties in Europe, but all of these, in many instances, very virulent anti-Semitic people.
Christian Zionists.
Christian Zionists. And, we joke about it here that these people only care about Jews insofar as that we can be sent back to Israel. 2/3 of us go into eternal hellfire. 1/3 sit on the right-hand side of God, but, as sort of like post-Jewy guys. And this guy, let's play this clip.
No, that's what he actually believes. This is the embodiment of that entire ideology.
Let's I don't know. Let's play clip number 5. Actually, this is from 2005. This is why Israel is so important to these Christian Zionists. This is clip number 5, because all they care about is that the Jews get back to Israel, so that the the Messiah can return. And if it takes a Hitler to do it, yeah, thank goodness for small blessings, I guess.
Jeremiah 16, behold, I will bring them, the Jewish people, again into their land that I gave unto their fathers. That would be Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Behold, I will send for many fishers, and after will I send for many hunters. And they, the hunters, shall hunt them, that will be the Jews, from every mountain and from every hill and from out of the holes of the rocks. If that doesn't describe what Hitler did in the Holocaust, you can't see that. So think about this. I will send fishers and I will send hunters. A fisher is someone who entices you with a bait. How many of you know who Theodore Herzl was? How many of you don't have a clue who he was? Woo! Sweet God. Theodore Herzl is the father of Zionism. He was a Jew that at the turn of the 19th century said, this land is our land. God wants us to live there. So he went to the Jews of Europe and said, I want you to come and join me in the land of Israel. So few went. Herzl went into depression. Those who came founded Israel. Those who did not went through the hell of the Holocaust. Then God sent a hunter. A hunter is someone who comes with a gun and he forces you. Hitler was a hunter. And the Bible says, Jeremiah writing, they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill out of the holes of the rocks, meaning there's no place to hide. And that will be offensive to some people. Well, dear heart, be offended. I didn't write it. Jeremiah wrote it. It was the truth and it is the truth.
There you go.
How did it happen?
I mean, imagine if, like,
Jeremiah didn't write the Hitler part.
Yeah, he's extrapolating a little.
There's some interpretation going on.
but I suppose, Hitler sent by God to help with the founding of Israel. And maybe a little bit controversial. Apparently not at this pro-war rally that Israel's lobbyists set up in front of the White House. Here is that same guy. I wonder if he delivers that same line. Let's hear it.
Freedom-loving democracy. Israel is this and more. Israel is the apple of God's eye. Israel is the shining city on the hill. Israel says, God says of Israel, Israel is my firstborn son. Jerusalem is the city of God. Jerusalem is the shoreline of eternity. Jerusalem is the eternal capital of Israel today and forever.
Yeah.
If you ever needed more reason to understand, an ability to understand why Zionism is not the same as Judaism. In Judaism, we don't believe that God had a son. We don't believe in idols. Technically, the Torah commands us to smite those who believe in idols. I don't take these things so literally. But make no mistake about it. That was a pro-war rally. That had nothing to do with anti-Semitism, because if it did, you wouldn't have dedicated one of the top 7 or 8 billed people to a renowned anti-Semite.
This is the one thing we didn't want to happen.
Yeah, and it did.
Whoops! How did that anti-Semite get on there?
They're trying to redefine what anti-Semitism actually means in order to cover for the continued genocide of Arabs and brown people. Like, they're trying to, and it's a very scary thing, make anti-Semitism about people who stand in the way of white capitalist power and like Western hegemony in places like the Middle East, exerting its influence through blood. And in opposition to that, they're trying to say that those people are in any way the anti-Semites, when Semites were, outsiders. Semites were persecuted, as opposed to like what they're thwarting it into and manipulating it into is now being the center of power in the world and in the West. That is not what anti-Semitism is about. It's evident in the fact that guy's speaking there, right?
Yeah, it was a pro-war rally. It was a pro-Israel war rally is what it was. Angel from Alberta says the Israel on Campus Coalition gave grants of $250 plus expenses for college students to go to rally. In the fun half, Emma will talk about the story of a private jet that they didn't want to walk on the tarmac, apparently.
Yeah, they chartered private jets to get there.
But here, let's play this one last clip of, and we'll play some others later. But here is political commentator Van Jones. And I will say this, look, for years, and I know that I've sort of alluded to this a couple of times over the years. I interviewed him, I don't know, about 10 years ago on this program, back when we were just doing audio. And I remember that interview just thinking like, what? He had made a big deal at Netroots Nation as to wanting to create a left version of the Tea Party. And I remember asking him, like, and who are we talking about? Like, who are, I don't know if I said the enemies or, you know, and there are none. It's there as if there is no sort of like, there's no thing stopping people from getting material benefits in this country. No person, no group, no aligned interests.
Just a lack of focus.
It's just it's just happening out there. And, you know, since that time, it's become quite clear to me that, like, wherever there is an opportunity for Van Jones to be the guy who can sort of be pushing back on something, but not really, he'll be there. And this is one of those instances, but he is so thrown off in attempting to call for, like, Israel to, I mean, he didn't realize, apparently, this is a pro-war rally.
How do you not realize that?
They are there to promote more war, period, like explicitly. And he didn't seem to realize this. He says something that even alludes to the fact that there should be some hesitancy to bomb civilians. And they start cheering for no ceasefire so strongly that he gets thrown off. And listen to what he says.
I do feel powerful is to maybe do something about what's happening here. Let's take a stand here against anti-Jewish bigotry. Let's take a stand against Muslims. Let's take a stand here against hatred. Let's take a stand here against hatred of all kinds. I don't want any Jewish mother.
Yeah. And so he apologized. He said, my speech read, let's stand against anti-Jewish bigotry. Let's stand against anti-Muslim bigotry here. Let's stand against hate here. But he says on Twitter, but the chanting crowd threw me off and I misspoke. We need to stand with Muslims and Jews and everyone who is under threat.
I mean, I don't doubt that he had originally sort of said, let's stand against Muslim bigotry. But the idea that, like, he walked into this situation and didn't realize how virulently pro-war and just these people were, it threw him off.
He must have been born yesterday. I don't understand how you're a political commentator and don't have that understanding.
I mean, it's kind of his thing, though. But I mean, that's bane for blood. Like, when you hear that phrase, like, that is, it's really sickening.
And by the way, a majority of Americans do not agree with anybody there.
The polling has really begun to turn on Israel, and really to no surprise. I mean, no surprise here. Yeah. There really is no surprise. And it's going to keep going in this way. And it's just a question of, like, you know, who is going to be, I mean, really with the Biden administration at this point, all I can think of is, you know, when John Kerry went in front of that commission back when he had returned from Vietnam and said, you know, who is going to be the last man to die for this mistake. And it really is going to be a question of, like, you know, how many thousands of civilians' lives could have been saved for what is going to be ultimately an outcome that could have been arrived at 3 weeks ago. But that's where we're at right now. And really, you know, I have absolutely no empathy for Van Jones. Is, you know, I misspoke. I feel bad. You know, whatever.
No.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
I just like to show up there. And we should also say, Mike Jones was there. Mike Johnson, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries,
Joni Ernst, holding hands, raising their hands in the air together, saying, "We stand with Israel," which means you stand with Israel's actions right now. That's the context of that, and that image of those lawmakers will be shown in history books.
So gross,
and not in the way that they think, or maybe they're willing to take that risk, but it's still like it's a complete devil's bargain. I don't know how someone like Jeffries, sleeps at night, honestly, on that. So,
I mean, you can not go. You can have some other appointment on that day. Yeah. It seems to me. A couple of words from our sponsors, and then we're going to be talking to Andy Kroll, reporter at ProPublica, who wrote this piece about Leonard Leo. And it really is. I mean, I've known a little bit about him, but this is it is a little bit terrifying and also fascinating in what his role has been in not just in like completely reforming the judiciary, but maintaining the judiciary there. Also, we'll be talking to actor Shaan Sharma. We've talked to him a couple of times in the past about the SAG-AFTRA strike. He is one of two, if I'm right, members of the National Committee who voted against ratification of the contract, primarily over AI for him. The other one was a woman that I was on a sitcom with.
Oh,
but, yeah, I don't think he will care about that, but I definitely will bring it up. Folks, I've talked about this in the past. It's a as a single father, at least half the time, with a kid who's sometimes a little bit of a picky eater, although he's getting less so.
Good.
And I think in part because of this. I've done like the ship the ingredients to you and do a home cooked meal because it makes it just much easier to do so. It's also a lot less expensive, not only than ordering in, but really in many respects, a lot less expensive than buying from a grocery store, particularly in New York City. There's no waste. But one of the problems I've had in the past, I've had some that the food was good, some that food weren't as good. In the past, also, it is the length of time that is associated with preparing these things. And I have found my go-to. It is HelloFresh. I love cooking with HelloFresh for a bunch of reasons. I also appreciate the fact now that they're supporting the Majority Report. But if you go to HelloFresh.com/majorityfree, use the code MajorityFree for free breakfast for life. One breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. They've got a bunch of other stuff that I'm starting to get into now in terms of what you can do. They have this like what was this, some type of waffle thing, but putting that aside for a moment. Holidays are around the corner, much harder to find time to shop and to cook. HelloFresh can take the stress out of your of your dinner by delivering everything you need to cook tasty meals right to your door, saving you tons of time. I have now, for me, the best thing about HelloFresh still continues to be they've got two sort of innovations. They've got meals that take like literally 15, 20 minutes, or one pan meals. So the cleanup is also really tiny. I've been doing like a street, what do they call it? Street chicken bowl. It's like like a chicken bowl you get like from a street cart.
Okay. Like a stir fry?
Yeah, no, it's like a rice bowl type of thing.
Okay.
But they've got chicken. I've done like a chicken sausage rigatoni. These are all, as far as I remember, like 20 minutes. There's a kale salad that I made with, it has like a little panko and couscous. And that takes a little while, but for something like that, I can make enough. I can have 2 nights in a row.
Nice.
HelloFresh will save you tons of time at the checkout lines, at the supermarket, at the cooking. You pick your meals, and they've got like 40 meals a week. Decide on a delivery date, and you're done. Go to HelloFresh.com/majorityfree. Use the coupon code MajorityFree for free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/majority free with code majority free. Check it out. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube description. And also, I love this product as well. I've talked a lot in a lot of different contexts about the amount of plastic that we generate and put into the environment. 5 billion plastic hand soap and cleaning bottles are thrown away each year. And if that's not bad enough, most cleaning formulas are 90% water. So you're coming home with a massive plastic container, and there's absolutely no reason for it. Blue Land is on a mission to eliminate single-use plastic by reinventing cleaning essentials to be better for you and better for the planet. The idea is super simple. They offer endlessly refillable cleaning products with a beautiful, cohesive design that looks great on your counter. Just fill your bottles with water. You drop the tablets in the water. You wait for them to dissolve. You'll never have to grab bulky cleaning supplies on your grocery run. Refills start at $2.25. You can even set up a subscription or buy in bulk for additional savings. And buying in bulk, we got some of those over there. The packages are like the size of this for hand soap. They've got a plastic hand soap. Yeah. It's a huge amount of room. They've got also different, smells and stuff like that, and also non-smells for people like myself. But they have cleaning sprays. They have hand soaps. They have toilet bowl cleaner. They have laundry tablets. No more of those massive laundry tablets. It's great if you live in an apartment. You save a lot of space, but it's also great in a home. And it's also great not to have all that plastic to recycle. Blue Land products are made with clean ingredients you can feel good about. Blue Land has a special offer for listeners. Right now, you get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/majority. You don't want to miss this. Check it out. blueland.com/majority, 15% off. That's blueland.com/majority, 15% off. Check it out. All right, quick break. When we come back, Andy Kroll, reporter from ProPublica on Leonard Leo. I want to welcome back to the program Andy Kroll, reporter covering voting, elections, democracy at ProPublica. He's written about Leonard Leo, the man behind the right Supreme Court supermajority, and more. Andy, welcome back to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigman.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me, guys.
Leonard Leo, I didn't realize this, but the guy's basically like my age. And he is the founder of the Federalist Society. And I didn't realize, or one of the founders, right, of the Federalist Society. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say, but by the way, you definitely look younger than he does, Sam.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for, Andy. I appreciate that. I think he's a year older than me. He's a year older than me, but I remember all this. I mean,
your head of hair, the beard, just you've got to beat in that department. Trust me.
Well, thank you. That's what I.
All right, Andy, quit it.
I had to butter him up a little bit.
There you go.
So Leonard Leo, I've come to think of him as the most important person in American politics that almost everybody hasn't heard of. He came up through the Federalist Society. He wasn't a co-founder exactly, but he was one of the earliest employees. And he's the guy who saw the Federalist Society as more than just like a intellectual debating club for conservative law students who felt like they were, outcasts or besieged or whatever. He believed that the Federalist Society could be a political juggernaut. It could be the engine to churn out future Scalias, future Clarence Thomases, future judges, future attorneys general, not just of the U.S., but of every state in the nation. His imprint on certainly the American legal system, but I would say even bigger than that, American politics writ large, is it's hard to wrap your arms around. I mean, that's why this story we wrote is so dang long. And, we took 3 hours of podcasts as well to tell his story. I really think people need to know it. It's when you know about him and you see what he's done in the world, both in the federal level and the state level, a lot of things start to make sense that didn't make sense before you recognize him.
The thing that really strikes me about the Federalist Society is, and I think I've been having conversations about the Federalist Society for 20 years, really, on air regarding like what they have that the left doesn't have, and I've seen it grow. And for me, the fundamental story about specifically about the Federalist Society, it is like it functions as sort of a placement like service, and it becomes self-perpetuating, where there is nothing even remotely like this on the left. There has been attempts with the American Constitution Society, but that has really, I think, in many respects, failed in that regard. But explain this dynamic, and then we'll get into how it developed.
Yeah, it is exactly what you describe: a placement service, a talent pipeline, a training academy. I mean, you can use a baseball analogy if you want and think of it as a farm system where, if you get all the way to the top, you're the Supreme Court, but there are a lot of other great teams to play on below the Supreme Court in this tortured metaphor. But it's more than that too, though. I mean, the other really key insight we had is, in the 90s, the Leonard Leos of the world, the conservative legal activists, have this crisis moment where 3 Republican appointees on the Supreme Court write an opinion in a case called Casey versus Pennsylvania that essentially upholds Roe v. Wade. This is a case, again, that was written, the majority opinion was written by O'Connor, Souter, and Kennedy, all Republican appointees, all expected to be with the conservatives on this issue of reproductive rights, and they are not. And so what the Federalist Society also does is it is a sort of intellectual hothouse for these young law students and lawyers and judges. It is a place where they can, hang out, they go to their conferences, they do their networking, blah, blah, blah. But the ideology, the legal doctrine is, if it's not enforced, it's certainly a sort of bubble for them where you won't have that problem of a David Souter in the future going soft on you or drifting to the left. I mean, the rallying cry in this crowd was no more Souters. The Federalist Society was the place where these people would go to try to prevent against that intellectual legal drift. So it's not just putting them in the jobs, it's also making sure before they get the jobs, and then when they get those jobs, that they don't drift toward the center, toward the left like Souter did.
So it vets, but it also disciplines and keeps people within that narrow, so that it got to the critical mass where he could put people in jobs. And that would mean, that's not just like judgeships in terms of, it's state deputy solicitors. Yep. It is, state deputy attorney generals all across the country. He got to the point where he could put people in jobs, and having the Federalist Society moniker imprimatur was a job benefit. Now it's basically a requirement.
Yeah.
But it also means that, to be in good standing in the Federalist Society, you need to prove that you're willing to make certain decisions at certain points and show within that organization. It's like there's a hazing almost. There's like, it's like we don't really have, it's a combination of a lot of different things that is really hard to point to a perfect analogy in our society, because we don't really have something like that.
It's hard to put your finger on it. I mean, ideological conformity is a part of it. Some of it is just like soothing these people, when they're judges and they feel like, the liberals are treating them in a bad way. They're mean to them when they go out for dinner or whatever. They can always retreat back to the Federalist Society chapters, the Federalist Society National Conference, which is like nerd prom for conservative lawyers, and feel safe. and that wasn't there before. I don't think the left took it seriously for a really long time. Didn't take it seriously until it was too late, thinking, oh, well, you know, they have their dinners, they have these debates, so isn't that nice? But like, that doesn't affect us in any way. Why would we do that? Until all of a sudden it was, you know, the Bush administration first, and then absolutely the Trump administration fully outsourced the judicial process to the Federalist Society. And then the liberals were like, oh, crap, that's what this was. And we don't have anything like this. And we're 20 years behind.
But it wasn't part of it too, though, it seems to me, is that to acknowledge that a society, a function like that can exist within the law, that judges are getting up there with a prescribed sort of like, you know, a menu as to how they're going to rule on things. To me, it wasn't just that the political left didn't acknowledge it. It was that the legal institution, and I'm still not convinced that they fully accept this. I don't think they can, because it fundamentally undermines the sort of like fiction that much of the classical legal thought is obligated to buy into, which is judges just look at the facts and the law, and they're not politicians. It's not political. And in fact, it is. And all of the fact that Leo could have done this is indicative of that fact that nobody wanted to actually recognize and reconcile with.
We talked to Carolyn Fredrickson, who ran the American Constitution Society for a while, and in her own begrudging way, she was impressed with what Leo had built. And, you know, she said, and we quote her in the story saying this, is like, you know, the right saw the courts as a political machine in a way that the left never did, or did far too late. Again, if it did at all. And there just isn't someone in the history books that we could find who had this insight in the way that Leo did, and also in the way that they use these ideas of originalism and textualism, sort of cloaked them in theory and history and scholarship and so on, when really they did also serve a very clear political purpose. They absolutely aligned with the political and policy priorities of the sort of libertarian corporate economic types, the Kochs, the Christian right, the Catholic right. I mean, this was very, very convenient for them that they could say, oh, it's all about the theory and the idea and the faithfulness of the Constitution, but also it accomplishes everything that we want to accomplish on a policy side, economics and otherwise. So, and again, the left just, I don't think, paid attention or really thought hard about all of these things until Donald Trump is saying, the Federalist Society is picking on my judges. Isn't that great? And it was basically like the good housekeeping stamp of approval for his presidential campaign back in 2016.
But I feel like when Feingold became the ACS president, there was an awareness, and there was an attempt, and maybe it was even during the Obama years, where there was an attempt to recreate this sort of same dynamic where the imprimatur of the ACS would help you get confirmation as a judge. And I think it was like Lou, I can't remember his first name, who was prevented from getting on the federal bench, or maybe it was and the ACS moniker actually became perceived, if not necessarily a benefit, but a liability. Like there is not the same network and frankly the same money that teams through this, because if you have that kind of money, you're going to want judges who are going to rule ultimately in your favor more often than not. And there's sort of like a conflict there, and it becomes the most naked, it seems to me, within the context of the judiciary. But people really should read this to understand that how that network worked, and like it's so businessy and corporate, and it's, you know, you could use the you could use, it seems to me like you could translate in this to like a small town where like somebody's going to be I work for the United Way, or I'm sitting on this board and that board and I'm creating these networks, and it's all networking essentially, but with one specific agenda in mind. But the other part that I found fascinating about your piece, and it touches on this in terms of the Supreme Court justices, is his job in keeping these Supreme Court justices happy. Because the way that we ultimately dealt with the court packing that didn't happen under FDR, my understanding was to increase, or maybe this happened prior, increase the pensions of judges to get them to retire, because they could retire and enjoy like a good pension. And now if you're a judge, you could leave and make a ton of cash. And you address that. Will you talk about that part of it? Because it starts to make sense why Leonard Leo is so deeply involved in making Ginny Thomas so incredibly wealthy and engaged in things. Why having, Harlan Crow come and pay for my mom's house and my kids' private school, why that is so important.
It was the big question hanging over all of the great Supreme Court corruption reporting we've been doing this year. We've got the receipts on the house. We've got the receipts on the yacht trips, the photos with Leo and Crow and Thomas and all of those folks in the Adirondacks. But the thing we couldn't put our finger on was why? Why are you doing this? Why are the justices, some of them, so brazen about this? And also just milking it in, just how many trips can they go on? How many perks can they accept? Gifts can they rake in? And, I was talking to, of all people, George Conway, the never Trump activist guy now, but someone who people forget until about 2015 was very much a card-carrying Federalist Society member, donor, advisor. I mean, this was his world until it wasn't. And what he told me, and what other people subsequently told me, was that these justices, Thomas, Alito, Scalia, RIP, they even though they have some of the most powerful jobs in the world, they still see themselves as victims, as targets, as unfairly maligned by the media and the mass culture, whatever, Washington. They also don't feel like they get paid enough for those incredibly powerful jobs. So, there are a lot of feelings for these justices, apparently. And there was a real fear that a Scalia or a Thomas would say, you know what, I don't make enough money for how influential I am. All of these people are mean to me when I go out to dinner with Ginny or whatever. Screw this. I'm out. I'm done with this job, even though the power that comes with it is so vast. I'm going to go work at some big law firm and make a ton of money, and I'll have my own house in the Adirondacks or the Indonesia or whatever. And so what Leo did was as Conway described him as a quote unquote den mother to these justices rather. He made sure that they felt loved and that they felt, doted upon by these wealthy individuals who, of course, they like these judges. They want to support them. They want them, to feel loved too. And so Leo played this connector kind of role, this consigliere type almost behind the scenes, where he would have these private dinners and the justices would be invited. And some wealthy donors would be invited. It's the same kinds of donors. And some Federalist Society people would be invited, including George Conway, who actually went to these dinners and saw how all this sausage got made. And that helped keep these justices happy. It helped them.
It's like they bring them there and it's like, hey, here are these billionaires across one side of the table. Here are these justices. Adopt a justice. Yeah. Essentially is what was going on.
Right. Come to Napa and do a Federalist Society talk, which already rough, but then, fly to Alaska afterward and go salmon fishing with, a major donor to Leonard Leo's enterprises. And, there's this sort of circle to this. There is I think synergy is what George Conway called it, but I will never use that word because I hate that word. But anyway, you get what I'm saying. And the key thing is keep
it serves
Thomas on the
everybody
bench.
at this in the situation. Like Leonard Leo gets credit from both ends of that transaction. He gets it from the donor and he gets it from the justice. So his power increases. The justice, gets what they want in terms of like the trips and the house and the private school education and all this. And the donor has access to a judge. That's something that, is billions of dollars turns out can buy, but it's, and also has an agenda at times that probably gets paid off, but you got a couple of $1 billion at that point. It's just like, I pal around with a Supreme Court justice. I mean, it's so twisted and problematic.
Oh God. Yeah. On so many different levels. I mean, even personally, if you told me a year ago that we would have a conversation about gross influence peddling at the Supreme Court and the influence being peddled is to the justices themselves, I think I, like a lot of people, still believe, no, the Supreme Court is above that. They are on their own little Mount Olympus, even though obviously we have Abe Fortas in the past, Stephen Douglas in the past. This isn't the first time this kind of thing has happened, but the degree to which it happens and has happened is just striking to me. And again, even all year as we did our stories about at ProPublica about Thomas and Harlan Crow and Alito and Paul Singer, all of these lurid details, $1,000 bottles of wine, there was someone missing. We knew that there was a piece missing. It was like a portrait on the wall and one person's silhouette is sort of cut out. And we figured out that that is Leonard Leo. And it just clicked into place for me. And I hope for people who read this or listen to the podcast, it clicks into place for them too.
All right. People should go and listen to the podcast and read the piece to get an understanding of this, because there's so much to be learned about it in terms of like this dynamic. But what it seems to me, the only thing that can be done, to the extent that anything can be done about this, is really the ethics reform that, has been stalled, it seems, in the Senate, because they put out that PR document yesterday that turned out to be really nothing more than a PR document. But I'm looking at like Cory Booker and I'm looking at Durbin and I'm looking at these guys and what they're saying now, like, we need to check this out. I mean, people need to push back on this and say this document does nothing.
They absolutely need to push back. If you care about this issue at all, if you've followed it at all, you absolutely have to make your voice heard. And really, I think you got to put some heat on the Democrats here. I mean, I was on the Hill yesterday talking to all of these people that you just mentioned and more. Durbin, Cory Booker, Sheldon Whitehouse, who's obviously very vocal and very active on this. There are subpoenas still under consideration in the Senate Judiciary Committee for Leonard Leo and for Harlan Crow. If those subpoenas were to actually go through and to be, actually authorized and out there, they would turn up a lot of information, a lot of things that we do not know, despite all that we have learned this year. But right now, it is unclear if the Democrats will go forward with it. They are getting cold feet. That is what I was told over and over on the Hill yesterday. Various senators, for various reasons, are starting to think, oh, well, the code looks good, and maybe we'll sort of, bring the Supreme Court ethics recusal transparency bill to the floor for a vote, and then we'll say we did our work here. But that can't be the end. That is not actual transparency and accountability. So people got to be loud. Just look up who the Democrats are in the Senate Judiciary Committee.
We're going to do that, and we're going to post their names on the podcast and YouTube description and their phone numbers, and people can very easily call.
Those are the people that the senator, that you need to contact for sure right now.
Andy Kroll, we'll put a link also to your piece and the podcast on Leonard Leo. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. Go to our podcast and YouTube description, find those names of the Democrats on the Judiciary Committee in the House, call them up. You don't need to be a constituent of theirs to say, I'm telling all my friends who live in Ohio, or I'm telling all my friends who live in Chicago, or in Rhode Island or in New Jersey, this is an issue for us. So make us think about it. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be talking to Shaan Sharma, member of the SAG-AFTRA Negotiating Committee and the National Committee, if I'm not mistaken. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. A real pleasure to welcome back to the program Shaan Sharma. He is a member of the SAG-AFTRA Negotiation Committee and a member of the National Board, and one of at least 8, and Shaan can explain to us, one of at least 8 who voted against ratifying the contract that SAG-AFTRA negotiated with the AMPT. The AMPT. Shaan, welcome back to the program.
Nobody can say it. I think that's on purpose. Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, all right. So first off, just explain to us first why I said at least one of 8.
Yeah, our national board is made up of 70 national board members and 10 national officers, like the president is a national officer. And because we have 25 locals, just like the United States has 50 states, every local has a different population of our membership. So, for example, the Twin Cities local, which is North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota, only represents a little over 600 members. So their national board members' vote is weighted less than a board member from Los Angeles who represents 85,000 members. So in the boardroom, my vote is the most powerful vote amongst all of the national board members. Any LA national board member represents far more members than other locals around the country.
We should be doing that with the U.S. Senate, but that's a different that's a different story. All right, let's, before we get to why you voted the way you did, let's just go over for a moment, like what the elements of the deal were that SAG-AFTRA was on strike for. My understanding is basically 3 major categories, if you will, and correct me if I'm wrong. One was just basically an increase in wages. One was getting residuals from streaming services, which is a sort of a new innovation in the business model of these things. And the third was the idea of artificial intelligence, which in probably more than any other industry at this moment in the stage of AI is a real threat to the very existence, it seems to me, of of the workforce. So was those the three basic categories?
Yeah, those were like 3 of 5 or 6 that we really sold the strike authorization vote on back in April, May. And certainly the commitment to the membership was to come back with a wage increase that at the very least kept up with inflation, just to keep, our buying power the same through 2026 as it was worth in 2020. There was a demand for an increase in streaming residuals, but that is separate from the new proposal to share in the revenue that these streaming platforms generate off of our work, where we have worked at reduced rates for 14 years to help subsidize the growth of these streaming platforms. And now all we wanted was to meaningfully participate in that revenue. And then the artificial intelligence, of course, is a huge part of this, because the right time to lock up protections, especially around something like this, is when it's in its infancy, not when it's in full maturity, where it's a huge profit center for the companies that are incentivized even more to protect it and to not give us what we need. But 2 other big things were to increase contributions to our pension and health funds, because we had a third of our members kicked off the health plan in 2020 after being sold a contract that promised to keep our health plan stronger, and it was a total lie. And then we also wanted to really improve the working conditions around self-taping our auditions at our own homes, which was necessitated by the pandemic. And so that practice has been rife with abuse and putting both the costs and the labor on the performers around auditioning. And so that was another way that we sold the strike to our members.
So let's go down, let's keep AI for the last one. But in terms of those 5 or 6 sort of like silos, if you will, how did it come out in terms of, let's say, self-taping and the audition process?
Yeah, so that particular area is one of my areas of expertise. And on the negotiating committee, I was one of the main experts that the committee looked to for guidance on what to do in that space. I'm the chair of the LA Locals self-tape work group that developed 38 proposals to try to protect our members from abuses in that space. And a few of the things that I even wrote by hand are in this new deal. And there are a couple of things that we achieved that I'm extremely proud of, including a 48-hour minimum turnaround to self-tape that has to exclude weekends and holidays. So they can't make you work over the weekend and holidays unless you want to, but you don't have to. So our members are getting about 110 days back where they don't have to work if they don't want to. And I'm really proud of that particular thing. But on that particular section, our negotiating committee made a commitment to one another not to allow certain things to happen. And I would love to be able to be more specific, but because of the damage to auditions and self-taping that this language means, we now have to take a legal route that I can't compromise by going in any further detail. So it's one of the main reasons I am a no on this contract is the way it damages the most requested service that our members provide to productions is their auditions.
Interesting. And I can just say, like, one thing I remember is that there was always some stipulation that if you get called back, like it was like the second callback you're supposed to get paid for, that never happened. And people don't understand this dynamic that, like, auditioning is part of the job, but it is a completely unpaid part of the job. It is, there's not a lot, interviews theoretically are, people go on job interviews but there's far less of those than there are for auditioning. There are times, back in the day, I'm going 5 or 6 auditions, maybe a day, not getting paid for any of that. But that's my whole day. And you've got to take time off of work if you've got a second job and this and that. So that's really, I think, misunderstood by folks as to how what big issue there is.
Yeah, and that could be a whole discussion for another time because, it's been in our contract since 1937 that we're entitled to payment for an audition if we didn't book the job as a courtesy payment for the time and energy that it takes to do it. But our members don't know what's in our contract. A perfect example of that is if you have to pay for parking when you're going to an audition, they're supposed to reimburse you. Members don't know that stuff, so they never really claimed it, but it doesn't mean it's there. It's not there. It's there. It's just you only have the rights that you're aware of, really. So increasing contract literacy is a big issue that I'm working on, and so many of us are working on in the union.
And we should also say, too, that there's a dynamic here where if you get a job, particularly when you're starting out, it's like you feel like you've hit the lottery. And so the idea that you would say to the casting director, hey, I want to be reimbursed for my parking when nobody else in the room is doing that, it puts you at least a mental disadvantage. Maybe put you
with commercial auditions. You know, I just had a commercial audition yesterday, and you would go into audition for a McDonald's or whatever, and sometimes the audition would run late where you're waiting there more than an hour, and you're entitled to overtime pay if they keep you past an hour at your audition. And yet actors are terrified to sign out with their actual time, because even though they'll get paid, they may not get invited back to audition again. So, you know, fear of retaliation keeps a lot of people from standing up for their rights. But if we don't push back, we don't have those rights.
Right. And that's why it's so important that when there is a provision that says, you know, it's up to the actor, you don't want that, because that's like a slippery slope down to like a race to the bottom at that point.
That is exactly why I have concerns about our AI consent and compensation proposals, but we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. All right, let's go with the pension and health fund contributions. How did that go?
Well, one of the things we can be proud of is that we increased the pension and health contributions on 30 and 60-minute programs in a substantive way for the first time since 1980. So that is a good thing that will bring a lot of money into the pension and health plans, and hopefully enough that the trustees will be able to restore at least the seniors to the health plan that lost their coverage 3 years ago by allowing their residuals to count towards their qualifying for health insurance. That was the big thing that was a real betrayal of the seniors, is that their residuals would no longer count towards the $27,000 you need to qualify for health insurance.
Wow. Okay. And all right, and let's go in terms of wages. Where are we in terms of catching up on the sort of subsidies, essentially, the functional subsidies that actors paid to develop the streaming platforms?
Yeah, so if the commitment was made, and I believe it was, and if we go back and look at everything Duncan and Fran said, the commitment was made that the minimum for us to accept was at least adjusting for inflation. And we weren't successful in achieving that in this contract. We came in at 7%. We went in asking for 15. At the time we went on strike, we were at 11, and we ultimately settled for 7, which is 3 points lower in the first year than we would need to actually adjust for inflation. And I don't blame our union for trying to sell this as a win by the fact that it broke pattern with the DGA and WGA. They got 5% raises in their first year. We got 7. So it is a big deal to break pattern, as much as I think pattern is BS. But the commitment to the members was to keep up with inflation, and that isn't happening, except for background actors who did get a first year raise of 11%. But I think background actors are in the crosshairs of being replaced by digital replication. So for all kinds of reasons, it's easy to give a raise to people you won't need to hire very much of anymore.
And again, that's going to come in the conversation about AI. But let's talk about the streaming. It doesn't appear to be residuals per se, but there is a sort of like a mechanism in which actors as a whole get to participate in streaming successes. Walk us through this, because this formula is, at the very least, it's different in terms of the payout, is my understanding, than the WGA and the DGA.
Well, it was, we started out by asking for something very clear, that we wanted 2% of the revenue that these streaming platforms generate off of our work. And that was going to represent about $1 billion a year in new money into our members' pockets. And then we pivoted, after fierce resistance from the AMPTP, to a 1% of revenue share in the form of a per subscriber, 57 cents per subscriber. So then that was when we went out and said, hey, for less than a postage stamp a year, you can take care of our members. And that was worth about $500 million a year. Where we ultimately landed is with a variation of what the WGA got, which is a streaming bonus, a success bonus, that only rewards us if a show is watched by 20% of the domestic subscribers of a platform in the first 90 days that it hits the platform. Now, you and I know that there are all kinds of things these platforms can do to ensure no show ever hits 20% of their subscribers in a 90-day period. They can change the thumbnail, they can bury it off the front page, they can do all kinds of things they can deplatform it at 89 days. They can do all kinds of things to make sure they never have to pay that estimated $40 million. So we went from $1 billion to $40 million, and that $40 million will have the pension and health contributions taken out of it. So you can take $8 million out of that. So that leaves $32 million estimated. That's if they even have to pay it, which I don't believe that they will have to pay. And then 75% of that will go to the cast of those shows, and 25% will go to a fund that hasn't been seated yet with trustees from both sides, that hasn't decided how it will be distributed amongst everybody else. But suffice it to say that if the goal was to make working in the streaming era and business model sustainable again, $8 million sprinkled across our membership, that really isn't going to get the job done.
And I'm sorry, even if the show is platformed and pushed to the top of the algorithm and it's on the front page, 20%, given like just the amount of shows that are on these platforms, is already way too high of a bar to clear, even in the best of conditions, it seems to me,
absolutely. And it only applies to shows that were specifically made for streaming. So any shows that are moved over from linear television or cable don't count. Like we've been hearing how Suits has been blowing up on Netflix. Well, that would not qualify for this bonus.
Wow. I didn't realize that didn't. I mean,
but you can understand, listen, that when the negotiating committee lost its will to keep fighting, which was a brutal thing for me to see, because our members were begging them to stay strong, they were scrambling to salvage whatever they could. And this, at least, if you listen to Fran and Duncan, gets us in a new pocket of revenue that we can expand in the future. Although Fran can't guarantee she'll be president 3 years from now when we renegotiate this, nor can we promise that will be our biggest threat and area to negotiate 3 years from now with the advent of AI and so many other things. And so if we couldn't get it while we were striking, what are the chances we're going to get more when we're not striking? So
right.
I have concerns that I don't feel like this honors what our members struck for.
I mean, I am sympathetic to the argument of like, we're in the bucket essentially. Yeah. And it's really just a matter of next time we'll decide where that bucket floats down this river. But to set up this type of dynamic where this is the weird part about it. The streamers have no incentive to make anything a hit in that way in the first 90 days. They're going to have the content there forever. They could put it on and bury it, for the first, 75 days. And then, the way that we release a show is we seed it for 75 days, we put it in the back end, and then we start doing the campaign to promote it and have the algorithm, push it after 75 days or whatever.
As long as people don't cancel their subscriptions, they have no interest in making sure they ever have to pay that bonus. The other thing that's kind of insidious about this, and I know it was done with the good intention of at least sharing some of that money with everybody as opposed to all of it just going to the cast of these big shows, but it does pit our members against each other, because the casts of these big shows are going to say, why are you taking money out of my pocket that I work so hard to be on a hit show, which is rare for any actor to be on a hit show, and give it to everybody else without even asking me, without me having a say.
Right. And that last provision is different from the WGA. I mean, I happen to like it, but I think the problem is that when you make the pie so small, the fights over the slices of that pie become much bigger.
Yeah, the lowest bar that most of us were willing to go was an additional $250 million in some kind of streaming revenue share. We asked for $1 billion, we would have settled around $250 million. But in the final days, we didn't have the strength to stand up for more than $40 million.
Honestly, I think they're sitting in those streaming offices, and it took them 25 minutes to figure out how they will pay out virtually nothing under that formula.
Yeah, and I do want to say, 3 years ago, I was part of the Dissenting Opinion 2020 campaign to oppose the last contract, and I was not a fan of that leadership and that administration. But I can tell you this time that everything was done with integrity. I have a lot of love and respect for the negotiating committee, Fran and Duncan. I think everybody did their best, but I think in the end, the threats and the pressure made them lose steam at the very moment I felt like we needed to be strongest in kind of this back end, the 5-yard line. And I don't think that we exhausted all of our tools or leverage or at our disposal to kind of get what we needed in that moment. But the system did operate with integrity. It's up to the members to decide whether these good people who tried their best is acceptable or not.
And we should say, and I still want to get to the AI, but I think the pressure with the WGA ending their strike, the pressure becomes extraordinary because when the writers aren't writing, there's no after a while you don't have this backlog of content and you can't get the actors in there. But once the writers start writing, there is a couple of weeks before they start to produce some of these the content, and the process can then begin at that point. All right, let's go to AI, because this is this also seems really problematic. And in terms of who knows if there's going to be, how many streaming platforms there's going to be in 3 or 4 years. It's quite possible there may be a reversion because they've made a lot of big mistakes, these companies, in terms of AI, this seems to be something that is definitely going to be in the future, and it's going to be definitely existing. And anything you do today is almost irreversible because of the nature of what they're talking about, which is why I think it's so important.
Which is why getting protections in generative AI were so important, which we really failed to get. Which is where they can ingest all of our performances, all of our previous work, our behavior, our photos, our voices into a model, and then spit out a synthetic performer that has little trace pieces of all of our DNA. But unless it's recognizable in terms of a specific facial feature, that's what was so disappointing about what we got in this space. This kind of token protection that swayed some of our negotiating committee members at the 11th hour to vote yes, was they thought we achieved more meaningful protections in this space. But you have to look at this synthetic performer that was made in the meat grinder of everybody's data and say, hey, that's my nose, that's my eyes, that's my lip. Unless you can recognize clearly a facial feature of a natural performer, we don't have any control over what they do with that synthetic performer. And who's going to be able to prove it's my lips and not your lips? So for me, the real aim was to say they can't use our characters' names, they can't use our names, and they can't use our performances or anything that has to do with us in a generative AI model without our consent and compensation. And we failed to get that protection.
I mean, because that's basically like we're hiring non-union workers. I mean, we're hiring non-union actors. We're allowed to hire non-union actors. It just so happens that we created them, and they're from.
And what's even worse about the synthetic performers, Sam, is it says that they can do that with all non-human characters. So any aliens, any fantasy creatures, any animal creatures, whatever. All of those used to be performed by our members doing performance capture, things like that. Those can all be synthetic under the terms of this contract.
The thing about this, too, that I think has even more resonance is that when we talk about, there's a lot of pressure because a lot of, there's obviously a lot of other people who work on productions who they're not on strike, but because the actors are on strike, these productions aren't happening. This AI stuff is a threat to Yahtzee. It's a threat to it's a threat to the grips, to the ADs, it's a threat to everybody who works on a production, because it starts with, we don't need to hire any actors for this, and very quickly devolves into we don't even need to leave the studio. In fact, we don't even need to leave this office. And everything becomes basically animation at that point.
That's right. And not only does it threaten crew, it threatens our own members. I mean, there are certain professions that are now just going to be unviable. And one of them is voice matching. We had a whole community that would, do ADR and looping for performers who couldn't come back and do that for themselves, that would voice match, say, Denzel Washington, or voice match Allison Janney or whatever. And now they can just use their voice clone and pay the original actor, and puts all those voice actors out of work. I have concerns about loop groups and walla groups that do the background sounds that you hear when you're in a show. I have concerns about dancers and singers who can just be now, done with synthetic performers using synthetic voices and voice clones. I'm concerned about stunt performers, because in our language it says that if anything is incapable of being performed without serious threat to life and limb, that they can use a digital replica, which is largely what stunt performers do, is the dangerous stuff that could be threatening to life and limb. So I think that so many of our categories that we represent may be harmed by this, including background performers, who I can't see a reality now in which they hire any more than the required count that's in our contract. So they have to hire a certain number of background actors, but beyond that, they can use all replicas. So yeah, I have serious concerns about our AI protections.
And this does not reverse. I mean, this is not like we didn't get the 12% we wanted and we only got, 7%. And next time we can take a bigger bite. There's no way to reverse this. Like, once this is in the system, once this is set up, it's almost the opposite of the streaming sort of like a pitch, which is, well, we've created a structure where we participate. Next time we come back, we want to participate more. This AI thing sets the markers and basically says this is going to be the dynamic. And once that dynamic is set, I don't see how you go backwards on that.
Yeah, and the way this works is it's really only going to provide protections to the most successful, recognizable star actors. For anybody who's not recognizable, not a name, now they're going to be competing against everyone dead and alive who can be de-aged, who their estates can license their synthetic or their digital replica to a studio. I think we just saw that Edith Piaf is being resurrected for a new film with her voice and her likeness, and it's just going to be the start. And so, yeah, I'm very concerned about how this affects performers who don't have the leverage to fight for themselves or are not recognizable. Because what's the difference between a synthetic performer who doesn't resemble a natural person and a unknown actor who people don't know, from Adam themselves? So yeah, I really worry about those who are newer in their careers.
It's going to be creepy when all of our, stars are synthetic. They're not actual human beings.
Or when people become huge fans of a completely synthetic character.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
In the influencer space, we have completely artificial AI generated influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers, and they're not even real people, but people fall in love with them and want to see what they do. And that's going to happen in our space.
But the upside of that is, of course, it's going to be much less expensive for the consumer to go and see these things, right? I mean, of course not. That's the thing, is that this is not a situation where we're talking about automation that's going to allow, people to, you're going to be able to have a full, 4-course meal now. And it's going to be, more accessible to people. And, there's not a dime of savings on the consumer. There's no value to the consumer to this whatsoever. This is exclusively about putting more money in the pockets of really, ultimately, these tech companies.
Well, and we may find that we really enjoy certain parts of this synthetic, AI created, content. But one of the things that I think our community can take some heart in is that storytelling is always the most important thing. We didn't know the actors in Squid Game and it became the #1 show on Netflix. We didn't know the actors in Parasite and it was an award-winning film. Even the show that I'm on, The Chosen, has no name star actors and it's one of the top shows on the planet. So it's really storytelling at the end of the day that means the most. And I do think that there is a sincere desire from humans to see humans in storytelling, and that we do want to celebrate human achievement. And I actually think that any performances that are digitally altered by AI shouldn't be eligible for awards, because you should have to be able to do the performance yourself in order to qualify for an acting award, for example.
All right. So what happens now? In a day or two, right? We're going to get these postcards. I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA myself. We're going to get postcards. I think it's like a 2.5 week period or 3 week period where there can be ratification. How do you get your message out with what obligation does the union have to say, here are the dissenting views on this?
They don't have any obligation to do that. We have a national board policy that if a third of the board were to vote no, then we could consider including a minority report, which we did put in the 2020 referendum booklet. But with only 14% of the board voting against at this time, that wasn't even a topic of discussion. Also on that note, the national board meeting was so short that I can assure you that I would bet that almost all of the national board members voted on something that they didn't understand. We were given only 2 hours to review it. We begged for an extension by an hour. It took 3 hours just for our team to explain what was in the summary. And they had already scheduled a press conference immediately after the meeting. So I encourage any member to go reach out to their national board members and ask them if they fully understand all of the provisions in this new deal. I promise you they won't be able to answer and will pass you off to staff. So I have huge concerns that the national board just rubber stamped what the negotiating committee recommended and didn't provide proper oversight to this deal. So the members are now the final kind of defense against making a critical error. So I don't think the member ratification process is perfunctory or symbolic. I think every member has a duty to read the details for themselves and weigh the pros and cons. There is a lot of good in this deal. It fills $1 billion of potholes from the failures of past negotiations, and they have to figure out whether it's acceptable for them or not. For me, it's not, based on what I witnessed, and I was in the front row seat and had a hand in creating what it is that I have to vote against today. So that's all I think. The union has everybody's email and home address and phone number. We're going to get postcards and emails and robocalls and videos, everything saying vote yes. And that's understandable. That's what their majority of their national leadership told them to do. And every good union member is going to want to trust their leadership and vote yes. And in this case, their leadership is trustworthy. They're great people who tried their best. I just think that we fell short and fell apart in the last few crucial weeks that did a lot of damage to certain communities of our union and other contracts in the mad scramble to close a deal to make Bob Iger happy on his Q3 earnings call. And I just can't get down with that. I can't support that. I don't think that that was necessary. And I think especially the AI piece represents existential threats. So how do I get my message out? I'm here talking to you. I'm talking to other press outlets that are interested in my point of view, but I can't compete with the communications department of the union. The only thing that I can hope for is that enough people vote no, that at least the AMPTP and our union leadership recognize that it wasn't perfect and that members are paying attention.
Yeah, and I got to say, I think we certainly have been trying to get you on before the vote, so we had no idea ultimately that what your perspective was on it. This has not been, I don't even think the full, sort of material of the contract has been released until maybe today. And so we had no idea. Let me just lastly, from your sense, obviously I don't know how specific you feel about getting comfortable about this, but what were the elements that increased this pressure? I only had, able to go out once a week on my day off to go to the picket lines. But I saw things were, there weren't the numbers there were, 2 months ago or 3 months ago before the writers had stopped. But there were still some people out there actually, by the time we get to noon on the East Coast. But give me a sense of what pressures were out there.
Oh, sure. We had pressure from A-list celebrities. There were some who were trying to be very helpful and were very helpful, back channeling and offering to, pay more in dues and things like that were very appreciated. They just didn't understand how our contract worked, so it wasn't really something we could do in this moment that would solve our problems. But we had other celebrity A-listers going out there and putting pressure on us to just take the deal right now. What's unfortunate about listening to those successful A-listers is they don't work for the minimum terms of our contract. They all have their own contracts and teams and often are producers, etc. So, I'm more concerned about those who actually work the contract and their opinions than those that don't work the contract and just want to get back to work as producers and high-level A-list stars. There was also pressure, of course, which everybody should and would feel, of the cost to our community, to our sister union members, to our own members. We had crew that were caught in the crossfire here because they didn't choose this strike, but they were trying to be good sister union members to us. But lots of crew and production people got really harmed by this. Even some people sadly took their own lives. It was not good. We felt that pressure every single day. But the leaders of those unions were also incredibly supportive, saying the better you do now, the better we're going to do next year when IATSE and Teamsters go to the table for themselves. But I think really the pressure was when the AMPTP and the CEOs threatened to cancel the rest of the shows for this television season. And some of the shows that they had threatened to cancel would have impacted members of the negotiating committee. So I have a concern that in the future we should not seat the negotiating committee with anybody who's actively employed on an AMPTP production, because it represents a conflict of interest of being able to stand up for everybody or just trying to protect your own employment. And then there was this weird thing about how they valued their package, which to me exposed a really sad, I guess, blind spot of our own team, which is, if you remember back in July when we declared the strike, the AMPTP said they offered us $1 billion package. And here we are now saying we got $1 billion package. So what did we actually gain over the last 4 months? Well, the truth is that we gained a lot economically, about $240 million, but that's because our team values the July package at $775 million, not $1 billion. So why the discrepancy? It's because the AMPTP was applying the 7% raise to everybody who works over scale as well. So they were making the case that paying an actor $10 million a picture, they're now going to have to pay them 7% more. And so they're factoring that cost into the raise. But in what world does increasing minimum wage by 7% increase our salaries if we're making 50, 60, 70, 80 grand a year? So it was their kind of funny money, fuzzy math to try to claim that they were offering us more than they actually were. But the fact that our team didn't know that was really disappointing, because it makes it sound like we didn't really get much when we go out and tell the members we got $1 billion. But I do want to make this very clear. The strike was absolutely essential and worthwhile. If we would have signed what was on the table in July, our AI protections wouldn't be anywhere near where they are. We wouldn't have to have this fund, for example, with even as underwhelming as it is for me, we still wouldn't even have that, nor a number of other economic things and non-economic things that we got. So everybody who sacrificed should know 100% that the strike was worthwhile and essential. I'm just not happy with the way that we closed the deal, how we got off the strike, and what I witnessed over the last 3 weeks of the negotiations.
Shaan Sharma, member of the SAG-AFTRA negotiating committee and the member of the national board. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. You've been really an invaluable resource for us throughout the strike, and we can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks. We are going to clip that segment with Shaan right after the show, so that if you have friends who are actors, you can send it to them. This is a vote that, any minute we're going to get emails as members of that union, letting us know that it's time to vote on it. They're sending out the ballots. I'm checking right now because I usually get a lot of updates from them. But send it out. It's really it's a very difficult situation, because there are a lot of people who are out of work and have been out of work for a long time, and crew members who trying to figure out how they're going to get through this holiday season and beyond and whatnot. But
I appreciated the discussion of the casting stuff and like the union sticking up for that, because I remember job hunting just for this profession, and Business Insider, I'll name specifically, I did so much free work for that company.
Yeah.
Do give me 800 words on 3 different articles and submit that for a job that would pay probably $32,000 a year.
Yeah.
I never really considered that in acting, but it makes a lot of sense, and that's horrible. I can't imagine something that I can't act at all. We tried to do the Halloween stuff. I just can't really get it. It's a type of vulnerability I can't get to, and to have to go through that. Oh shit! I have to ask for parking because I'm fucking broke.
Well,
and that sort of stuff is crazy.
The interesting thing is, and I will say that that's part of the reason we haven't had to go out for the AM quickie too much. But when we do for some people anyways, we've done write a test thing, and we paid. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's something to actually recognize there's some work being done. But like you could go out on audition. First off, and it's obviously changed that, and when I was in the business, there was like a 4-month period of time in pilot season where it was constant. Like you would go on 3 auditions a day. And if you're in LA and one's in, Venice and one's in Studio City and one's out in, in Hollywood, that's your whole day. And you're putting, I don't know how many miles, it's gas and all of this. And you're not going to go in there. And it's a weird industry because so much of it is, you're selling yourself and your personality and a perspective. Like you're acting the moment you get into that. You're not necessarily acting as the character, but you're acting as somebody who's like, I don't know, showing a certain amount of confidence. And you don't want to get in there and say like, hey, can I have like the $7 for the parking? Because and
I'm auditioning for billions.
You don't want to piss off the person who could give you money and hire you, change your life.
Yeah, I mean, the casting director, you need to get past, the casting director is one threshold. And, the person next to you or the other person next to you is not doing it. And so you don't want to put yourself at a disadvantage. There's a lot of like, it's almost like it's the value of a minimum wage, is that there's not unfair competition amongst the people, who are willing to undercut other people. But I don't know. That's
and that undercutting it also, like you see a lot of this stuff come up in Hollywood of actors who come from actors, and so why do we have to talk about nepotism? It's because of these things. Like the extent that we can address these sorts of insecurities that make it so like, oh, you can produce your own great reel at home with like proper editing and lighting and send that in like at a timely basis, as opposed to somebody who has to like maybe, I don't know, book studio space with what remaining money they haven't paid for rent. And
yeah, the self-taping is also really, is difficult too, because that's a function of like, how much of that stuff you have, and it's also, it's not easy to set all that stuff up. But all that said, getting challenged by Mark Wayne, a guy named Mark Wayne who wants to go right now, wants to fight me right now. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show, free of commercials, but you also get the fun half. And you not only get the fun half, you get the ability to I am the fun half. The app is free for everybody at majorityapp.com, but it has special features. You unlock an upgrade or whatever you call it. What is it? What is that called in the game?
Level up?
You level up. By
took a shot.
By I am
unlocked an
the
upgrade.
Well,
that works too.
I was in high-level negotiations with Saul about he wanted 20 more minutes of screen time to watch his YouTube shows or whatever it is, and then he's like, "What if I do 25 minutes of Khan Academy?" They apparently have like got them on this like math thing. And trade that for 20 minutes of watching YouTube. And we're going through it, and he's like telling me, he's basically describing like, the thing I like about Khan Academy is not only am I learning math, but if you do well, you can earn like some type of like currency, and it gives you like these new, it opens up these new avatar, total gamification.
Education, yeah.
I'm not mad at that though. At least
I'm not mad at that either. I'm like, you want to do more math, dude?
I would have loved that. I mean, I've had Audible for like 13 years now, before it was even bought by Amazon, and I've got every badge on that app because I've listened to it a lot. But I used to like that thing of like, oh, I've hit 300 hours this year or something like that. Like,
we've actually talked about that in terms of like, how to gamify, getting member support and that, and then I get tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need some tech people in San Francisco to figure out how to get into those dopamine loops.
I was trying to remember some of the games that did any. It was probably either of you two. Did you guys ever play Pajama Sam? Yeah, yeah. Oh, did you?
No.
Oh, okay. Wow.
For me, it was.
It was Pajama Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there at the birth of it.
Yeah.
Space Invaders was the first game that we had
was.
at the and then Galactica and but Space Invaders was the first one. Then Asteroids.
Mm-hmm.
And then down the road I got into Zaxxon.
I don't know what that is.
It's a flying game, and also the Centipede one. The Millipede.
Okay.
But speaking of games, Emma, ESPN.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Well, we recapped Week 10 in the NFL on Monday. Also talked a little bit about the Edmonton Oilers. But tomorrow we'll have our picks against the spread and also just like two big news items. Ken Dorsey, the implosion of the Bills, and also Deshaun Watson, basically having been paid, I don't know how much money for like 11 games, hundreds of millions of dollars. Plus, on top of that, all the draft picks the Browns gave up and the whole sexual assault thing. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Matt, Left Reckoning.
Last night on Left Reckoning, we had Jason Miles of This Is Revolution on to talk about Ibram Kendi and corporate anti-racism. And also in the post-game and premiering at 2:45 is our discussion of Candace Owens, who has upset Ben Shapiro by criticizing Israel, but basically because her Jewish colleagues didn't defend her when she defended Kyrie Irving and Kanye West and whether Hitler should have kept it in Germany. So a little bit of confused criticism of Israel coming from Candace Owens, and we got deep into that. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning or watch after the show today.
All right.
See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on.
to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total
Pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the fun half. We got a lot of very catty stuff today.
Yeah, I love it.
We got a lot of catty stuff today. We will get to that, both like in the right-wing media and also in the right-wing lawmakers. A lot of personal conflicts.
I like it.
Yeah,
and we
I'm
will
enjoying
wildly speculate about one of them.
Well, it would be irresponsible not to speculate.
I agree
in
with
some
you.
instances.
I agree with you.
PragerU says, what's the best way to watch Majority Report uninterrupted? I keep getting sent to ads by YouTube all the time, and because it's a live stream, video just cuts back to wherever you guys are in real time, and I miss the entire segments. Didn't used to do this on live streams. Bummed. Left is best. We gotta look at. We can't disable it.
I think we can turn it off and maybe turn it on afterwards. But they changed the way they do their live ad placements.
When we create the live streams, we can't go forward with it without adding a.
You guys got to take it up
ad.
with YouTube. This is an issue. That,
all right, we'll look into it. There's got to be a way where.
But they did. They like 2 or so months ago. They changed their entire kind of ad model, right? Because it was basically found out that.
Well, there was a Wall Street Journal article.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, a lot of this looks like they are like say sort of embedding videos onto websites and saying that those count as plays in the same way, and a lot of sus stuff like that. And I don't know if coincidentally or not, they have changed the way that they do live ad placements.
Interesting. I also saw that article about podcast companies like iHeartRadio. They're advertising on games, on apps, and like you can't play the game. If you take the free version of the game, you can't play the game without clicking on the link. That gives you the podcast listen. We got to get into that.
Oh yeah.
That is got to do the hustle.
I want our ads all over Grand Theft Auto 6.
Honestly, like I gotta.
They have to watch Majority Report to get to the next level of Candy Crush.
If the only thing that stands between that type of like sort of like gray area with advertising that wouldn't impact our listeners at all, but it would be like a way of boosting our ad sales. The only thing that stands between that and what we do now is really honestly just my laziness and forgetfulness.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I read that, I'm like, we got to do that, and then I totally forgot about it.
Yep.
And then it's like, oh no, I got to take a nap.
That sounds honestly like a better move.
Do we need to hear more John Hagee?
No, I think we covered that. We covered that.
Incidentally, he said that the Antichrist is going to be gay and half Jewish like Hitler. So.
I mean, he didn't say full.
Keep an eye out for it. That's all I'm saying.
Like those QAnon folks that have very specific ideas of how it's going to come down. Like we're going to watch like they're going to
8 hours
broadcast
on, 8 hours off.
Yeah, very specific. Like the way they talk about the Christian Zionists talk about like hell and the second coming or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not a Bible connoisseur, but I don't think that like they, it has like witch's brew formulas, like 3 tablespoons of this and cook it for this amount of time. That's they're too specific.
Let's play this segment. Peter Beinart is the editor at large of Jewish Currents. And then there's MSNBC contributor Michael Cohen, who I don't know, does he still write at the Globe? I guess maybe not. I'm not sure.
But everyone should be reading Jewish Currents right now. They do great work. Noah Colwin writes over there. Alex Kane, who I had on last week to talk about dissent of pro-Palestinian voices on campuses. and of course Peter Beinart here, doing really great work.
Beinart has been a really important voice on this question, really over the past, I guess, maybe 10, 15 years, when he, reevaluated his ideas in terms of like the Iraq War and this and that, and has been really excellent, really, for over a decade.
He was a leader as a student, wasn't he? Like a Zionist sort of student leader.
Yeah. I mean, he is. To the extent that like an apostate, I guess, has a lot of credibility in certain spaces. This guy has it. And here he is. And look, it is quite clear that Hamas is a threat to Israel in some fashion or another. And the real question is how do you deal with this threat long term? How do you create a situation where you can provide, and I'm not sure that Michael Cohen actually really contemplates this as a primary objective or goal. But if your primary objective goal is not, if one of them is not to emancipate Palestinians, then a lot of things follow logically because you have made that first basic assumption. And we are now in year 75 of Israel's existence as a chartered state recognized by the UN. And if the goal was at that time, and remains so, to give a place of security for Jews, because obviously the Holocaust, but even prior to that, there was a few places where Jews could live safely. If it was the goal, and remains the goal, then clearly what the country of Israel has been doing has not worked. And that is specifically to deny freedom for Palestinian people. And you can go back 30 years and argue whether Arafat was aggressive enough in accepting the peace proposal from the Israelis. But you can also go back to 1948, in the months before Israel was established, and see that there were pogroms perpetrated by then Zionist militia, and in some instances, Zionist terrorist organizations like Irgun, that massacred tens, if not hundreds, of Palestinians and dispossessed tens of thousands.
Yeah.
And I suppose then you could go back and say, but the Romans or the Greeks sacked, Jerusalem 2,000, 4,000 years ago. But the bottom line is, if the agenda in modernity is to keep Jews safe, it's not working in this way. And so the assumption is, how do you deal with the threat of Hamas? Or how do you deal with the threat that naturally comes when you dispossess and oppress millions of people? With that, let's listen to this exchange.
I think it's important to be clear what's happening in Gaza. I mean, what's happening here is obviously a tragedy, and we are seeing people needlessly dying, including children and primarily civilians. But that's a decision in large extent that Hamas has made in order to use people as human shields to prevent Israel from attacking them. I mean, we're seeing right now this fight happening around the Al-Shifa hospital. Why is that happening? Because Hamas uses hospitals as command centers, military command centers. So I think we have to be clear that, we can blame Israel for this, but Hamas deserves a great deal of responsibility for the carnage that's being unleashed in Gaza. But in general, I think that the problem I have a little bit with Peter's argument is that, no one would have said after 9/11 we shouldn't attack the terrorists who are responsible for 9/11.
Pause it for
right
1
now,
second.
there is
I just want to make something clear, because I was alive then. There was a lot of people, not everyone, not the majority of people, But there was a lot of people who were saying, and I think one of them actually ended up being a Democratic presidential candidate in 2004, who were saying that this should have been a police action. Instead of invading two countries and occupying them for well over a decade, in both instances, we could have gone in and found the perpetrators of 9/11. That's what we could have done, but we didn't.
We didn't.
So there were people saying something very different.
And I should say that that precise kind of police action or special forces action would have been even more appropriate in this instance if, again, your only concern is that of Israelis, because a police action would allow for there to be like more direct access to the hostages that have been taken by Hamas, as opposed to carpet bombing a region and ensuring that hostages will die under rubble at the very least,
and engendering more terrorism. And also, like,
well, here let him answer those other second order implications.
Threat from Hamas in Gaza. We saw that threat. And the idea that insurgency could be worse than what we saw on October 7th seems a bit hard to imagine. I think right now, the focus needs to be on the urgent threat that is coming from Hamas, a threat that we saw on October 7th and that we still see today. We are still seeing rockets fired into Israel. We are still listening to Hamas leaders talk about how this changes nothing from their perspective. They still intend to use Hamas as a launching pad for attacks.
It's interesting. Let me let Peter in, because we don't have a ton of time, so I want to let Peter get back in. When Israel went into southern Lebanon to depose the PLO, when they were launching rockets against Israel in the early 1980s, it couldn't imagine anything worse. It got Hezbollah. When the United States went in to depose Saddam Hussein, we couldn't imagine anything worse. We got ISIS. Unless you have a political strategy to deal with the fundamental underlying grievances of the Palestinian people, which are a lack of freedom, you are not creating deterrence in the long run. You're entering a quagmire that is going to leave Israel more wounded and more unsafe than it is today.
Well, you're definitely not going to create deterrence if you don't respond to the death of 1,200 of your civilians. I mean, that is...
There's a different way of responding than this. You can respond in a targeted military way, the way we should have done after 9/11, not by deposing a government and entering a quagmire.
I wish we had more time. I really appreciate this conversation.
Yep.
Also, I mean,
very well said. I mean, that very well said. And the problem is that there's not in Cohen's argument here, there is zero, never mind, if people don't have any type of moral obligation towards the freedom of Palestinians, that's, I find it reprehensible, but that's their problem. But if you agree on the idea that like everyone there, including the Israelis, should feel secure, there is simply no evidence in history that without killing another million people in that region, innocent civilians, that you're going to be able to provide that security for the Israelis. Like even on his own terms, put aside the morality issue.
Yeah.
There is, to do this and to have no sort of like notion, none of it's contingent on any type of political solution. None of it takes into mind a political solution which involves freedom for Palestinians. There is no solving this in that way. They can continue to try and mow the lawn, but it can go another 75 years, and I don't think it frankly will, because I think Israel will be completely isolated far before that. And you'll still be, this is not safe.
Yeah, I mean, again, putting aside just the fact that the liberation of the Palestinian people isn't really even taken into consideration here. Even the kind of threadbare political solutions that are provided don't take into account the Palestinian sovereignty and their ability to determine their own democracy and have political rights. Like the idea that what's being floated to Netanyahu by the United States government is that the Palestinian Authority will take over Gaza in the aftermath of these mass killings. And there's no consideration there to what the Palestinians want. That's also not a viable solution either. But even that undemocratic notion, even that idea is being rejected by Netanyahu. So which begs the question, well then, when even regime change essentially and the imposition of the Palestinian Authority, which is deeply unpopular among many segments of the Palestinian population, even when that is imposed on people, that imposition is rejected by the Netanyahu government. What is the solution here? What is the solution except complete expulsion of all Palestinians from Gaza or murder?
Yeah.
And that is literally the question that we're dealing with here.
It's not about anti-terrorism. It's about what Baruch Himmerlin, who was a sociology professor at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, called politicide. This is about, they literally just did a controlled demolition of the Palestinian Legislative Council, which is Gaza's de facto parliament. You don't do that if you're fighting terrorism or looking for a political solution. You're trying to end their politics entirely, including and also them as a people.
And it's amazing to me to see ostensibly liberal people take on arguments that have been mostly reserved for the right on this very topic, which is we talk about this on this show a lot, the look what you made me do argument. Look what you made us do to Gaza. Look what you made us do, Hamas, by using human shields. Look what you made us do by leveling refugee camps, by bombing maternity wards and hospitals and then invading them and shooting people. Look what you made us do. Yeah. You shouldn't have done the
rocket out of the concentration camp we're keeping you in. So
yeah,
now you got to kill a bunch of your civilians.
And I'm sorry if that is like your knee-jerk reaction. You have to ask yourself what your belief is in and what your blind spots are when it comes to Arabs and Muslim people and who you've decided can be humanized in your eyes from a Western perspective and who isn't. So.
Good for Beinart and also Joy Reid, who I think has been doing some.
Joy Reid's been doing great work on this. Good for her. And yeah, I mean, there's many of the MSNBC hosts have stepped up here in a way that is good to see.
Let's play this footage of the hostage families in Israel who are marching from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem to essentially promote. Yeah, it's like a 16-hour walk. Wow, I think. Yeah. I think.
Biblical.
To address Netanyahu, to basically pressure him to actually attempt to get the hostages back. There is supposedly a deal that is being negotiated with through Qatar for at least the 100 or so women and children held by Hamas in exchange for 100 of the women and children held by Israel who are uncharged in Israeli prisons. In other words, being held hostage by Israel. And they're having to march because the Israeli government, particularly Benjamin Netanyahu, and probably others, but he has a real strong personal incentive. They want to be able to justify this incursion in any way they can. And the existence of the hostages helps them justify this in some fashion. And the release of the hostages will shorten the window in which there's justification, at least in their mind, will function. You're already seeing U.S. popular support begin to turn. Certainly, world support has turned. And that's why you have to have all of these family members of the hostages actually march on their own government to attempt to secure their release. I mean, think of how bizarre that is.
Insane.
And contrast it with the pro-war rally that we saw yesterday in Washington, D.C.
That use them as the same object Bibi's using them for.
Exactly. Never mind what they actually want, which is, I can't even fathom the grief and pain that people are going through seeing their own government bomb the hell out of the place where their family members are held hostage and then claim publicly that that's what they're right. doing that to save them.
Right. Those posters that people are hanging up in the States, should probably also have like the email for Bibi Netanyahu to
Yep.
ask him to see if he can do something to get him returned. Here's pictures from that march. Apparently, John Hagee couldn't make it there. They didn't. I don't know how many anti-Semites they had to speak to that rally. Probably none.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just gives you a sense of how blinkered the stuff is here. And which is not to say that 80% of the Israeli population seems wants to go into level Gaza as it is. But I mean, they're not afraid to support the return of the hostages because they want them back, as opposed to wanting to use them as leverage to level Gaza.
I mean, I just remember what Blinken tweeted out on October 8th. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan and I spoke further on Hamas' terrorist attack on Israel. I encouraged Turkey's advocacy for a ceasefire and the release of hostages held by Hamas immediately. So immediately we knew that actually the way to secure the release of hostages is to probably do hostage swaps. But instead we decided to bomb civilians.
Yep. Let's go to the IMs. Sean Hannity interviewed the son of someone who died in 9/11, tore into him when he said we shouldn't invade Afghanistan. He handled it with so much grace, but the interview ruined him. But Jeremy Glick's words still ring true to me today. If I remember correctly, that was Bill O'Reilly. And in fact, I remember this very clearly because when I did the first Majority Report, it was in February of 2003, and I invited on the weekend Fox and Friends guy and basically yelled at him because of that interview. And he at one point said, like, I don't do international stuff. He was bummed.
What year was that?
Bill O'Reilly, who was interviewed him. Sorry. Yes, it was Bill O'Reilly. 2003.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I don't do international stuff. I don't do like the major story going on, like AKA
honestly,
the star of the war on terror.
I felt bad for that guy.
Yeah.
Because he had just I think recently had come on. And, of course, and I don't think he lasted very long on that network. He was a black guy, and I don't think he understood exactly what he was signing up for with that thing.
Yeah.
But and I was shocked that I got him on. I don't even know how that happened. But he came on, and then I just yelled at him for like 20 minutes.
Fun.
It was actually really fun, and that's why I ended up wanting to do this. Giddy up. Israel's been attacking Gaza for a month and had boots on the ground for 2 weeks. H-Dub, the "look what you made me do" frame really reminds me of an abusive relationship.
It is. It is.
Fart Wayne Mullen. Did you see my friend Loghorn? I mean, Clay Higgins grilling Chris Ray about Ghostbusters on January 6th? Rotten the Pig, look what you made us do is basically every war. Look at what you made us do, Japan, when you bombed Pearl Harbor. I'm not quite sure that's exactly the case. I think this was a full-on war. I think to a certain extent, we were looking for a reason to get in. But that was the way that the FDR could sell it to the rest of the public. Giddy up. Israel has been attacking Gaza for a month. They have shown they can attack defenseless hospitals, but have found no hostages dead or alive. This is an attack on defenseless Palestinians by cynical, sociopathic land grabbers. Militant apathy. What's your opinion of the Netflix show Fall of the House of Usher? I think it's pretty good. Critique of excessive wealth and greed, plus some pretty good acting. I've never even heard of it. I just don't watch that much TV.
I've watched it. I am a big Edgar Allan Poe head, and that sort of theme, the Poe themes. Every episode is based on a Poe book, and sort of does an update on it. I thought it was really good, and I'm a big fan of this sort of the Netflix. I can't remember who the director is of this stuff, but some guy who does like The Haunting on Hill House and some other Netflix Midnight Mass. Really good. I like spooky stuff, so I think Full House Usher isn't scary, but it's kind of like Billions with Succession with like a spooky atmosphere around it.
Phineas Arab, there is no pressure for Biden to change his stance on Israel's war on Palestine without a willingness to change your vote. Elevating people like Cornel West, who has advocated for Palestinian liberty for decades, is one way. I mean, you've looked at Biden's polling. It couldn't be any lower. I mean, it really couldn't. They're going to ride this out. The only thing that's going to make to actually create pressure, if you really want to create pressure, it seems to me, yes, you can tell pollsters, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden.
In the meantime, join Jewish Voice for Peace or Student Justice for Palestine or the Palestinian Youth Movement or one of these groups rather than making this about electoral politics. Like, like support Cornell, vote for him. Like I think we need to be organizing as opposed to just deciding how we're going to behave on election day.
Yeah, there's just no way. Like to the extent that there's going to be pressure applied right now, it's going to come from Congress and the Senate, where you have much more ability to sort of like pressure them.
Not an election a year out from now.
I mean, that said, like I think Cornell's handling this better than any other of the candidates, but yeah.
But I would contact your Congress people, have your friends contact your Congress people, obviously organize around this, go out for protests. But the more pressure that's put on someone who has a lot less resources and whose positions are a lot more tenuous than Joe Biden's, is going to help with upward pressure.
And the Democrats don't even take the withholding of your vote seriously when it's when it is super legitimate or saying that we'll vote for a third party candidate or stay home. They've always approached that with arrogance. So that is not the most efficient way to pressure Biden right now. And I'm getting a little annoyed about it because there's real ways that you can try to pressure the administration right now. And it's not via Cornel West. It's from making calls, it's from organizing, it's from doing things on the ground right in this current moment.
Yeah, it can't be individualized. It has to be as part of a broader group that you're speaking, as a part of.
I mean, you could say that to pollsters.
Sure, yeah.
And you want to call Joe Biden and say, I'm voting for Cornel West.
That's what I'd say.
But but I think the
people overstate how empowering this sort of how we vote on election day and how we say we're going to vote is, and
that's what the people are like. The whole thing in 2016 was we're going to teach the Democrats a lesson, and then it worked. The Democratic candidate lost almost. To a person, every person who said, we're going to teach the Democrats a lesson said, it's not my fault. Don't blame me for Donald Trump. What wasn't that the plan? But putting that aside.
That's why it needs to be organized.
But putting that aside, right. But putting that aside, what was the lesson that the Democratic Party learned? They went with probably the most conservative guy, which was also predictable. Completely predictable.
That they would try to put forward someone.
Predicted.
Yeah,
it's not even they.
Well, no, but the public
Democratic,
would want,
the Democratic base.
They would want a stabilizing force after a wrecker like Trump. It made the conditions for Bernie Sanders much more difficult.
Without a doubt.
Yes.
Without a doubt. The same thing happened after George Bush. It's just what happens.
I mean, Marx talks about this in the 18th Brumaire, there's all these political questions, but the main one people are interested in is who's going to be the executive.
Right. And I think it's just, let's evolve when we're talking about these kinds of things, our political thought beyond that a little bit. Because it feels a little media focused, I got to be honest.
It's 2:15 already. We were going to take phone calls today. Well, we had good people to interview, so.
Yeah.
Screw it, everybody. Sorry. Friday. Maybe I told Matthew Film Guy he could come on, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe he forgot. This is fun. Yesterday we had a little bit of the sort of Republican on Republican action, the conservative on conservative action. Things
Via
are not going
elbows.
well at Daily Wire right now.
Oh, yeah.
Listen, we have a company here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of times where like personal stuff comes up at the commissary. There's been occasions, I'm not gonna lie, I've seen, Matt will cut me off. He'll get the last pudding or something. I'll give him a little shove in the kidney. He comes after me. You're pathetic. Why'd you do that? And then we get into a little scuffle, but we try and
That's what we pay the security for.
That's what we have the security for. But at the Daily Wire, I think there's going to be there's some conflict going on.
Bit of a Cold War.
Here is Ben Shapiro. Yesterday. Was this yesterday? Or this was released yesterday. We don't know when it was. Ben Shapiro. It's worth it just to see the white sport jacket that he's wearing.
He's standing up on like a table or something.
Yeah. He's at some, God knows what this event is. I can only imagine.
But he's talking about Candace Owens, who's been tweeting against Israel.
Yes. And what a surprise. I mean, Candace Owens has really gone to bat for, here's Ben Shapiro, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Yes, the question is about Candace Owens. I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful. Without a doubt. I can't cause that. Yeah, I mean, she still works for my company. And I think she's been absolutely disgraceful. I think that her faux sophistication on these particular issues has been ridiculous. It's not faux sophistication, it's ridiculous. Everybody can see the moves that she's making and the things that she's saying, and I find them disreputable.
Her faux sophistication on these issues.
Yeah.
It's funny how she just has faux sophistication on this one issue.
Right.
As opposed to the faux sophistication on everything else.
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't so distracted by his white sport coat, but
he's a Hollywood guy.
I can only imagine how horrible that whatever that event was he was at. But it's interesting. And here is Candace Owens responding. Somebody better get over there. Maybe Crowder can.
This isn't responding to Ben Shapiro. This is what Ben Shapiro was responding to.
Oh, okay, this is what Ben Shapiro was responding to. Okay, here it is.
And she's also been tweeting a lot, right?
Oh yeah, then let's look at some of those tweets. I sent you a compendium of tweets but here is Candace Owens. This is what she's been. Now, was this before or after
Shapiro? This is before Shapiro.
Okay, this is before Shapiro. I didn't know.
This is the sort of thing that he's upset about.
This is what he's upset about.
What's happening here in America. And we could look back on my past commentary because I have predicted this was going to happen. I have predicted that pro-Israel causes were going to legitimately lose support over the years. My predictions began, of course, when it first happened to me. Now, in America, we kind of had this idea, and it wasn't exactly wrong, that
Pause it for 1 second. Wait a
Spencer
second. So she's saying, I knew that the support for pro-Israel would start to diminish because there are people who are starting to say, and I think the American public is now like, wants a ceasefire.
Mm-hmm.
And she's saying that she also was bombed. Is that what she's saying?
Well, bombed in the sense that like well, maybe we should let her.
Okay,
yeah.
so not literally bombed, but was attacked by Israel in this way.
Well, not Israel.
Well, that's
per
what
se.
she's saying. That's what it sounds like she's saying, but we're going to understand that her understanding of what Israel is a little bit different than normal people's.
You're right. I forgot. Like there have been a lot of like people centering themselves as opposed to people in Gaza here in the United States about how fearful they are and how really the genocide in Gaza really affects them. But I didn't realize she is a Karen too, but that she's doing it in the reverse. That's what's fun about this.
We kind of had this idea, and it wasn't exactly wrong, that Richard Spencer was an anti-Semite. That's where we began in the discussion about what is and what is not anti-Semitism.
Sure.
We also had people saying that Nick Fuentes was an anti-Semite. This was agreed with across the board. He was banned from virtually every platform because he was discussing Holocaust numbers, and there are clips of him that have circulated essentially saying that he doesn't believe that the amount of Jews that died in the Holocaust is actually factual, right?
Can you actually pause it? Sorry.
But then something.
So Nick Fuentes went on Tim Pool's program with Kanye West, right?
Who Candace Owens knows.
Who Candace Owens knows. And then after or before that appearance, or was it when Fuentes also went on with Kanye on Alex Jones' show when she defended Kanye West?
Yeah.
Which time? Because now she's saying everyone deplatformed Fuentes, but she was defending the guy that was basically holding Fuentes' hand and going on and saying anti-Semitic stuff on all of these other platforms.
And to summarize, she's basically accepting that, yeah, we should kick this guy off platforms because of what he's basically denying the Holocaust. And continue.
Yeah.
All he was doing was giving facts and figures. Go ahead.
In the Holocaust is actually factual, right? But then something started to change, and people that were explicitly pro-Israel started being accused of being anti-Semitic. I mean, I could just give you my own circumstance, obviously. Notoriously, the clip that circulated of me talking about Adolf Hitler, about whether or not he is properly considered to be a nationalist. I don't believe he is. I don't believe he ever was
just to
a nationalist.
Just to summarize there, what she said was that he should have kept it to Germany, and the problem was that he just made Germany great again. And the problem was he expanded
outwards
beyond borders. So
like he was
nothing to do with Israel, really. But anyway.
Because he had ideas to expand outside of Germany, was then used, doctored, and used to suggest that I was an anti-Semite, despite the fact that I had been working for Turning Point USA at the time, a remarkably pro-Israel student organization that was marching across college campuses, was hosting Jewish events, pro-Israel events. Obviously, we'll get into it later, but also sending 300 kids a year to Israel. And at that time, I had just come back from Jerusalem to watch the embassy be minted during Trump's administration. So it's very bizarre. And after going through it and seeing that people that I had defended for years were so quick to say, you are not allowed to even talk about nationalism and Adolf Hitler, somehow that could be construed as anti-Semitism, and none of the voices that I had given my voice to were defending me, didn't feel good, didn't like it at all. You know, does it make you quick to want to defend people that are not going to return the favor when the time comes? And we've seen this phenomenon, I've covered it on this show, hoax after hoax.
Pause it for 1 second. I mean, I think this might be a little bit difficult for people to follow. And I just want to make it clear. She is saying that she proved her pro-Israel bona fides over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, she starts saying, sympathetic things about Hitler. And all of a sudden, people are like questioning whether she's anti-Semitic. Now, it is, I think, and I don't think we should blow past this.
Mm-hmm.
It is very possible that she is so ignorant that she does not realize that you can be pro-Israel and anti-Semitic.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one of those guys was featured at the pro-Israel war rally yesterday. Reverend Hagee, again, the guy who was too anti-Semitic for John McCain in his 2008 presidential campaign.
Yeah.
She is just blown away by this concept. Now, it's also possible that she's just an anti-Semite and is trying to hide behind her support of Israel, where all the Jews got to go to bring about the second Messiah or the return of the Messiah or whatever it is.
Or maybe a little column A, a little column B.
And it could be a little column A, column B. And she's just mad that people aren't defending her. And but
she's got another example. Let's see if it's her reading of like the British or the Israeli new historians.
Or does it have anything to do with the death toll in Gaza, or is it more about her?
Well, we'll find out.
Okay.
We've seen this phenomenon, I've covered it on this show, hoax after hoax of individuals that are being accused of anti-Semitism who have not explicitly said anything against Jewish people.
Explicitly.
I think one of the biggest circumstances arrived just a few months ago with Kyrie Irving. Remember Kyrie Irving, the basketball player, he is tremendously popular. He is known to be a very good person. And he shared a documentary link and it went viral. I've never seen people so incensed. The documentary was freely available to any person on Amazon to watch. Amazon was not in any trouble for selling the documentary for people to watch. And yet Kyrie Irving tweeting out a link to this documentary. Anyways, the documentary was entitled Hebrews to Negroes, and he shared it on his Twitter feed. And what followed was essentially a firestorm. Even though he shared it without any commentary, for all I know, he watched it and thought the same thing that I thought when I finally got around to watching it. It looked like a PowerPoint. It was very poorly done, and it was very hard to follow.
Get too much into that. I just will say there is one section of that movie which includes a number of myths, lies about Jewish people, including number 3, which is that 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust during World War III. So she basically said the Fuentes thing about Holocaust denial was worthy of getting him off platforms, but this video also contained that exact same idea.
Yeah, but it was low production value, Matt.
She was confused when she saw it.
It was called Hebrews to Negroes, Wake Up Black America. And it's about how the real Jews are black people, not Jews. Right? I mean, so that's the summary.
It's a bit confusing.
Yeah. All right, so that's what I guess made Ben Shapiro upset and why he gave that video. And then here's her tweets after. Right? Do we have that? Okay. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they should be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Oh, yes. She's being persecuted for righteousness' sake.
Just sharing a
for
confusing
theirs
documentary.
is the kingdom of heaven.
This is more about her, I guess.
Blessed are ye. She, I think, is showing.
Blessed are ye. That's what they call Kanye.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, blessed.
Did she actually mean to do that?
I think that's a coincidence.
No, but it is funny. Yeah.
I mean, I think like she deserves points for not saying "Blessed are me."
Yeah.
When men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money.
She's gonna go full anti-Semite.
Christ is king. She said next.
What's the black guy who does the sports who's also anti-Semite now? That Crowder had on and thought he.
Jason Whitlock.
Yeah, he's
anti-Semitic too.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so he's one of the.
She's gonna follow that I think.
Yeah. So.
But now, if she can't serve both God and money, is this her? Is she resigning from Daily Wire?
Well,
What's
it's interesting.
going on there?
Like, there's a number of times, and she's like, when she's talking about the Kanye thing back in the day, she's like, a lot of people are telling me don't sell out to Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager.
Well, what does that mean? Oh, and the globalists. Just
right, exactly. And so I just want to. This kind of brings.
Where is she gonna go?
Crowder, maybe. No, she can't go to Crowder.
That
bridge is burned too.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I do want to just play this though, because this is from. There's another clip that's going viral on TikTok where she and she even mentioned the clip that we played that. Look at what I've predicted about this topic. And she said, like, actually, even about 4 years ago, I started feeling like these accusations of anti-Semitism were getting a little bit cynical. I just want to play this clip from 2019. This is from a video that she put, and let's see, let me zoom out a little bit here. This is her covering this topic in, 2019.
Some pretty crazy stuff is going on right now, and I think that we need to discuss it. I actually had tried to flag this for everybody. I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe 1 week ago, when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez locked arms, figuratively speaking, had a public love fest with Jeremy Corbyn. And I started freaking out. I'm like, guys, this is not okay. Jeremy Corbyn is an on-record, open anti-Semitic leader in the UK. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is talking about the fact that they had a wide-reaching conversation and that she was looking forward to working with him. And I tweeted about it because I'm seeing this trend of open anti-Semitism and open racism that is coming from the left. So people in America who follow me need to pay attention to what just happened today in the UK. Jeremy Corbyn is pretty much what happens if Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez became one person. Openly racist, open anti-Semitic, but he's leading the Labour Party. The Labour Party, for those of you that don't know, is the equivalent to the Democrats over in the UK. So the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn is leading it. Today, 7 people from his own party resigned because they can no longer accept that their party has become so anti-Semitic and so racist. And this is huge. So people on the left in America, the Democrats, have just openly embraced an anti-Semite, somebody that is so anti-Semitic and so racist that 7 members of his own party resigned. Okay? That would be the equivalent of if Cory Booker, Nancy Pelosi, some people that have been in the Democrat Party for 50 years even, because I think one of the members had actually been a member of the party for decades, decided to resign because they no longer understood the radicalization of their own party. This is exactly what is happening in America right now. We talk about Ilhan Omar, who is just openly anti-Semitic, and I will give kudos where kudos is due to Nancy Pelosi for demanding that she issue an apology, but her apology was half-hearted, and she's still a member of the party. She's still a member of Congress, which to me is unacceptable. When people are openly expressing hate, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez openly expressed hostility towards Israel in that interview that we all saw where she said that they were occupying Palestine, and
yeah, well, so she
just a note on those 7 lawmakers. They left the Labour Party for a couple of reasons. One, because basically the definition of anti-Semitism that is being passed and accepted to by UK politics is that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic in itself, also, oh crap, what was the other point I wanted to make about that? I don't know. Go ahead, Emma.
But I don't know. But basically, she is the voice that is, in terms of criticism of Israel, that you should definitely not be listening to, because she holds pretty deeply anti-Semitic views and has no idea what she's talking about. So.
They also said, in addition to him being anti-Semitic, they didn't like his policy on Brexit. And I'll just say, if you think somebody is anti-Semitic, it's probably a bit redundant to then say, also, we disagree with his trade policy. But,
yeah, I mean, to borrow from Barnaby Rain, like the people who were saying he was anti-Semitic most in the UK were people with, Union Jack tattoos saying Jeremy Corbyn hates immigrants and also he's an anti-Semite, and that's why or loves immigrants and is also an anti-Semite, and that's why I can't support him, just to show how cynically that's being deployed.
Onion Breath also raises up the issue that, meanwhile in America, dozens of Republicans have resigned in the last few years due to the radicalization of their party. I mean,
yeah,
they come up every day. Conway was one of the guys, right? I mean, we came up in the legal interview. All right, I want to just do, there's some of the cattiness that also took place yesterday. It wasn't just in the right-wing media sphere, but also on Capitol Hill. We played that clip. It was breaking Kevin McCarthy
elbowed Sam with his sharp elbows, Tim Burchett, according to Burchett.
Yes, and now we have the actual audio that took place when the shove supposedly happened. And it looks like there could be more problems for McCarthy based upon this. But let's listen to this audio. Honestly, folks, if you've ever been to junior high, you'll get what's going on here. Mm-hmm. But if you...
Did you play the circle game?
The circle game?
If you hold your hands like this and
hold... Oh, yeah. No, my son plays that.
I don't get it.
It's so dumb. But
it's a boy thing.
It's some dumb boy.
It helps you prepare for the Senate.
But yeah, this is the funniest thing to hear them talk to each other like this. Is so pathetic. But it's funny. Here is so you get the sound you're going to hear is Burchett is actually in conversations with this a reporter Claudia Grisales for NPR, and then this audio happens.
And for context, Burchett's one of the 8 that voted to
Burchett is one of the 8 that voted to oust Kevin McCarthy. And we're getting a better sense of why that actually happened. It wasn't quite as ideological maybe as we were led to believe.
What's that? We're going to check in on the conference, how it went. It sounds like it went back and forth. And
I think it went all right. Sorry, Kevin. Didn't mean to elbow. Why'd you elbow me in the back, Kevin?
I know. I felt so bad.
Hey, Kevin, you got any guts? Jerk.
Has he done that before?
No.
Huh. That's a new move.
And now he starts to run after him. He's literally running after him. She's running after him.
Great mic sound there.
Hey, Kevin, why'd you walk out and elbow me in the back? You got no guts. You didn't so. They sat there and the reporter said it right there. What kind of chicken move is that? You're pathetic, man. You are so pathetic. What a jerk. You need security, Kevin.
Anyway, jerk.
Didn't he said, sorry, I elbowed you. Oh, why'd you elbow me?
Yeah.
You hear that at the beginning?
Yeah, he was so flustered. He was trying to say, oh, sorry, you elbowed me, Kevin. I mean, you elbowed me.
Yeah.
Jerk. Pathetic. And then clearly what happened is like the reporter was so taken aback that Burkett felt like, I'm looking like a real wimp here.
Yeah.
I got to go run after him, you pathetic.
Oh, crap. I just got punked in front of NPR.
I love that audio too. It's like what you hear when somebody, like a reporter who's in the war zone, is chasing down some important footage that they need to get, and it's really just the reporter chasing a congressman who wants to confront him about elbowing, getting elbowed.
It's like, I didn't elbow you. I didn't elbow you.
And I love it how he's
talking
like,
about?
he knows. I mean, Burchett knows that he's performing a little bit because he goes like, "You're a real chicken guy."
Yeah, you're a real chicken.
You know what?
That's a real chicken move.
It's a real chicken move. You big bully. Big bully. Well, it seems like, though, that maybe Burchett knows something that might get Kevin McCarthy into problems.
So after this, he goes on Newsmax.
Well, first of all, he went on everywhere.
Oh, yeah, to talk crap about Kevin McCarthy. And is this the same guy that said that McCarthy questioned his faith, and that's why he turned on McCarthy last minute? Yeah.
He was the one who said that when he was the one where he said that when they were talking about the decision that Burchett was going to prey on it, and McCarthy, he said apparently McCarthy was like, "Oh, you're going to prey on it."
Yeah.
And that really upset him.
He's maybe the most sensitive member of Congress that I've ever seen, but it's providing us with great entertainment.
You didn't spend too much time with Joe Lieberman, but go ahead.
He also has $17 million in an account that he'll be messing in a lot of people like mine and Nancy Mace's campaigns, I'm sure. And so
I don't know if he does that with Nancy Mace. She could come back at him with some stuff that he doesn't want out there in the public, I think, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, she's already told me. She said, I hope he does that with me, and she'll take care of him. She takes care of her own. But
hold on. Can we hear what the news reporter said, that he seems to be sitting on this big story about Kevin McCarthy?
Is it an intelligence service or is it a news agency?
Yeah.
This is pretty. There's something that Nancy Mace is sitting on that Kevin McCarthy doesn't want out there. Let's play this again.
I know that you know that we know.
Could explain a lot.
in a lot of people like mine and Nancy Mace's campaigns, I'm sure. And so
I don't know if he does that with Nancy Mace. She could come back at him with some stuff that he doesn't want out there in the public, I think, if you know what I'm saying.
What are you saying?
She's already told me.
We don't know
She
what
said,
you're
I
saying.
hope he does that with me, and she'll take care of him. She takes care of her own. But
All right, wait. And now I think it's important also to look at this guy on what this Newsmax. Look at his co-host, because she has a look on her face like maybe, I don't know if she knows or what. That's what really fast.
Pretend like you know.
Yeah, watch her face while he says this.
in a lot of people like mine and Nancy Mace's campaigns, I'm sure. And so
I don't know if he does that with Nancy Mace. She could come back at him with some stuff that he doesn't want out there in the public, I think, if you know what I'm saying.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's already told me. She said, I hope he does that with me, and she'll take care of him. She takes care of her own. But
Well, it's just interesting because Nancy Mace...
Where's Nancy Mace? Get her on the phone. Let's find out what's going on here.
Yeah, Nancy Mace was considered a very bizarre flip, given her efforts to kind of look more moderate, and the Gates and wing of that party being more associated with the conservative far righters. So people speculate as to what that decision was. Was it to differentiate herself? But it sounds like there's something quite personal between her and McCarthy. And according to the Newsmax anchor, that he didn't behave that properly or did something wrong. I don't know.
I mean, it really would be irresponsible for us not to speculate and to set up some type of like pool to see what it was. I mean, it sounds sort of personal, doesn't it?
Kevin McCarthy was married in 1992. It seems like he still is. Judy Wages, Judy McCarthy.
I mean, I wonder what Nancy Mace would have access to that somebody else wouldn't.
Or what she might have experienced in the workplace.
Well, I guess we'll never know unless people start asking Nancy Mace.
Unless
Maybe they
Newsmax
should.
reporter maybe asked a source or two instead of doing a wink and a nod.
I mean,
on
it sounds
TV.
like Newsmax reporter knows. It's like one of those things. It sounds like, you know, when she's coming on the show, before they go live, she's like, oh, Kevin McCarthy is a blankety blank because he blankety blanked.
Yeah, but he's got I mean, Newsmax not covering the Republican Party very aggressively, you might say. Probably needs to get the green light from some people before he makes that kind of accusation against one of the top fundraisers in the party.
I like it, though.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to have to save the...
Oh, and remember she wore that scarlet letter on her. Morpheus just I just glanced at the IMs. Remember? She wore that big scarlet letter with the A on it.
Yeah, because of her vote.
Because of her vote. But I wonder if there was some
It's
other
a
message.
double entendre.
Yeah.
Because everybody was like, we wonder if she knows what the scarlet letter stands for.
But she did that prayer breakfast thing.
The prayer
too.
breakfast thing where she was like, my husband wanted to have sex in the morning, and then I had to get to the prayer breakfast. She's kind of an odd lady.
I wonder what's going on. Boy, that's the kind of intrigue we need more of, ladies and gentlemen.
Where are your guts, Kevin?
I can't wait. Can't wait for this to come out about Mike Johnson too. Jonathan Armstead, Sam, I don't know if you saw, but The Atlantic is dedicating their entire next issue to focus on the Reconstruction. It includes articles from Eric Foner and past Majority Report guest Peniel E. Joseph. Well, I should say Eric Foner, also past Majority Report guest, as well as the full text of a new play by Anna DeVere Smith about how black children were put back into slavery under the guise of apprenticeship. It looks cool. It does sound cool.
The more The Atlantic is covering the Civil War and Reconstruction and not Israel-Palestine, the better.
Oh, shoot. I didn't. Okay, let me, I didn't turn on my Adium, so I got a very weird, we'll do some IMs and get out of here. It's going to be tough for me to. Ryan and Callie, the Palestinians were there in 2000. Do people think they are? They are the people that roam in Palestine after the destruction of the temple, who over the course of the next 5 centuries became Christians and Muslims. They are the same people as the Jews of the period that just stayed as some Jews did because under Muslim rule, Jews received better treatment than they did under Christians. This entire conflict is based on the lies of race, ethnicity, and religious difference. Indeed. Small D Democrat, you guys should also pull up the map that shows the Nile to the sea territory that the settlers want. Devoid reality, that Jews were there 3,000 years ago holds no water to me, where indigenous Americans here less than 200 plus years ago driven out by death and genocide by U.S. colonialism.
Yeah. And also, you know, I don't think we should be expelling Israelis from the land. Like, I mean, the settlers, I think it's maybe a bit of a different question about who has those legal rights, but...
Settlers have an organic, I mean, Pepe's, there's an organic connection to the land now, too, that also points to, like, a one-state,
democratic,
safe for everybody,
yep.
democratic between the river and the sea.
Let's see where we're at here. Nick from Philadelphia, listening to stories that make me... Oh, wait, well, that's old. See, that's the problem. I'm stuck here on the old ones here. M-Fest. The threat the Heritage Foundation poses is exactly why people on the left can't prematurely throw away their Biden vote. It sucks, but nothing good will happen by letting fascists gain power in 2024. I feel like that's from yesterday, too. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Not very nice of Bernie to deny us our Charles Sumner Preston Brooks moment. Keyboard cage fight. Van Jones booed at Israel rally for saying bombs should stop dropping on both sides. Chant of no ceasefire. So, yep. Oh my God, I'm way behind here. Penny in New Mexico. If you consider that originally Semites include people from a region and not specifically Jews, the Christian rights preaching about the Messiah in Israel makes even more sense. Iowa Ryan, my daughter's ex-BF left college in Colorado to go fight in Gaza. He's in for a shock. Rich kid has no idea what he's doing. He just wants to kill Palestinians.
Jeez.
Between the 101 and 5, Vane Jones. Nice.
There's a video going around of him in 1993, and it's like, oh, this is a guy who is interested in the attention that comes from politics.
JR in Philly, I've heard a lot of liberal nonsense on this show, but I never thought you'd criminalize friendship between a justice and his fishing buddies. Disgusting.
The authoritarian left strikes again.
Yep. Casey answer. Emma, what's your fantasy take on the Browns rest of the season now that Shaan is out with shoulder surgery?
My fantasy? Ask me tomorrow. I don't want to subject everyone to that. There's a place for it, but thank you for the question.
Screw Zionism. I have Israeli friends that protest my ignorance on the history, and it's very easy to assume they actually know both sides and have a metered view on the matter. Just a reminder, Americans barely know anything about their own state, let alone country. Am I supposed to believe fascist fundamentalists have an actual understanding of a complex historical issue? Please, don't get fooled. Don't lose your confidence. Buff Huckins. Hi, MR Crew. It seems there's a catch-22 regarding fascism and the conservative push to destroy democracy in America. That is, we can scream from the rooftops that it's happening while many of our family and friends roll their eyes and assume we're being dramatic and hyperbolic. If we somehow avoid catastrophe, they'll always think we overacted, preferable, but if we're proven right, I told you so would be cold comfort. Yes. Ryan in Cali, California law states if you show up to paid work, sorry, interns, and only work an hour or 2 hours, for whatever reason, you are owed 3 hours pay. So if these SAG-AFTRA members aren't getting paid for an hour, they're actually being ripped off for 3 hours, and the employers are breaking California law. All right. 3 more. Conservative mind virus. Regarding some of these WGAs, how do they determine at which point they're hindering technological progress by protecting jobs that are no longer necessary? How does any union do this? Well, but what is the value of technological process in this industry?
Yeah, it's a fetishized concept that obscures these sorts of issues.
I mean, like I say, like if we were, we can actually produce food, more food with less waste, and it's more nutritious. And but it means that we're going to have to, cut out the potash guy. Okay. Or, for instance, okay, we're coal miners. We're going to eliminate coal miners by promoting a technology that is going to move forward. And obviously we're going to want to, provide retraining for those coal miners. But yeah, I can understand that. But I got news for you. We're not talking about, there's no technological advances that come with generating fake actors.
Yeah,
there's no value added to any part of the process other than to the producers who are not going to have to pay for human beings to act, for human beings to set up lighting, for human beings to do makeup or hair or props or whatnot. That's the point. All right, 2 more. Aaron is not cool. I used to help an actor friend self-tape for years, and even with the help, it would take a few hours to film, try a few things, load it on the computer, edit it, add titles, export, and send. Then we get notes from his agent manager, and redo it all again. And the final I am of the day. Dalton from Ohio. Hopeful for another ballot initiative in Ohio to create an independent redistricting commission. 15 members, no politicians, lobbyists, or party officials can be on it. See more at citizensnotpoliticians.org. This could help Democrats weather 2024 in Ohio. Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today. Folks, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the man